Chapter 803 Finally Comprehending Sword Heart. Chapter 803 Finally Comprehending Sword Heart. In Ling Han's previous fight with Xin Yu's martial intent entered his body in the end, and he resisted against it for one entire month before wearing it away. This allowed him to touch a slight edge of Sword Heart, but this last step could take several days to cross, or several years, several tens of years, several hundreds of years, or even remain unaccomplished in his entire lifetime. The comprehension of Tao was just that mysterious. The saying, "To cover 90% of one's destined distance," brought the traveler no farther than the midway point, meant that before succeeding, it was no different from treading in the same place. Now, the Flea King's aura was even more terrifying. It was at the level of the 15-eyed Corpse King, and in a head-on confrontation, the Flea King could kill Ling Han several hundred times with a single breath. But now he was only to resist the shattering void tear presence, which was obviously a different matter. This was a contest of martial arts level. Although Ling Han's tear was much lower, he almost cultivated out Sword Heart, which was where his confidence came. Break out of the cocoon to become a butterfly, come out, Sword Heart, Ling Han said inwardly, but it always fell short a tiny bit, driving him mad. Pooh! He was hacking out blood in his mouth. Under the shattering void tear presence of suppression, even he would be heavily injured. On the outside, which shattering void tear elite didn't intentionally curb their presence. If they unleashed it recklessly, then except for those that were also at the shattering void tier, the others would all be killed. Even heaven tier warriors couldn't endure such presence at a close range for a long time. Pa, 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 the bones all over Ling Han's body shattered, and his entire person distorted under the presence's oppressiveness. Now he was 10 meters tall, but his body was thin and fragile, looking extremely weird. He was about to die. An enlightenment flashed across Ling Han's mind as he hurriedly dissolved one drop of indestructible true fluid, and his body immediately recovered. Even the shattering void tear presence couldn't stop it. However, the good sight didn't last long. After the drop of indestructible true fluid's essence fully dissolved, his body started to break down again. How come he hadn't comprehended Sword Heart yet? Ling Han suddenly realized that he was rushing it. How could martial arts be comprehended by rushing? More haste, less speed walked down the wrong path. It was no wonder under the oppressive presence of a shattering void tier elite who wouldn't be rushed. He relaxed his mind and no longer deliberately pursued Sword Heart, instead focusing on resisting the pressure. Pa, pa, pa. His body still had large amounts of wounds tearing open, making him look as if he'd killed thousands of people, bathing in blood and becoming a demon. Step by step, Ling Han's steps became firm. Blood was flowing and sweat was flowing, but his gaze burned brightly as an unyieldingness arose within. Even without having learned Sword Heart, he could still rely on himself to resist the shattering void tear presence. At worst, he would be riddled with scars, but what was it to martial artists to get hurt a little? He advanced with large strides, getting closer and closer to that true dragon's bloodstone. Finally, he touched it. Joy arose within his heart, and at this moment he felt some sort of shackles being broken within his body, an indescribable feeling rushing to his mind, an endless sword intent surging in his mind. Sword Heart. He was first taken aback before coming to realize it. When he took the last step, his spirit also completed a transformation, crossing the one last step into Sword Heart. He had an enlightenment. Some truths couldn't be deliberately pursued. The naturalness of truth coming naturally was in accordance with Tao. As he thought of those things, his movements weren't slow, either, as he pressed his hand on the true dragon's bloodstone. Although it was ridiculously large, after cultivating out Sword Heart, his divine sense was like it had been remolded, becoming extremely tough. It spread open like a fish net and enveloped the true dragon's bloodstone, storing it into the Black Tower. It was done. He turned around and started to leave the place of the oppressive presence. At this moment, he no longer felt strain. With Sword Heart's protection, his divine sense was stable. Even the damage of shattering void tier presence was pathetically little to him. He was still injured because he had just cultivated out Sword Heart, not even having initial mastery, let alone Sword Heart illumination. After a while, he finally walked out of this area, and Diamond Body exhibited its powers as the broken bones and shattered skin instantly healed. He then took out a set of clothes from the Black Tower and changed into them, looking like he hadn't been hurt a tiny bit. Hee, hand over the true dragon's bloodstone, and I can spare your life. But at this moment, 5 youngsters walked out from behind a few crimson rocks, staring at him with a murderous look. What? He actually didn't notice them. Ling Han was startled, and couldn't help but reflect on how he'd neglected the surrounding environment on the way back when he constantly tried to fathom the wonderful uses of Sword Heart. Besides, there indeed was a great limit on the divine sense here, making him fail to notice the presence of the 5 people. If they were on the level of Su Xiaoran and had suddenly launched a fatal attack, even he'd probably be in a flurry. He'd been careless and neglectful. In the future, he had to maintain vigilance at all times, or else it was possible to die because of some petty details, so long as there was a day that you didn't reach the peak of martial arts. Seeing that Ling Han dared to ignore them, the 5 people were all greatly furious. A man in an embroidered gown shouted, "Human, I'm talking to you!" Ling Han withdrew his thoughts and said indifferently, "True Dragon's Bloodstone is what I obtained. Why should I hand it over to you guys? Want it? Find it yourselves. I'm in quite a good mood right now. You guys had better not ruin it." Ha 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 ha. The youngster in the embroidered gown laughed loudly. How funny. A mere human dares to be impudent. Do you know who we are? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "I obviously know." Those 5 people couldn't help but look proud. Even a human knew of their fame. How impressive. However, Ling Han's next words made their faces twitch and reveal furious expressions. Because Ling Han pointed at them and said one by one, "You're a cat, you're a dog, you're a cow, you're a pig, and you're a sheep." The youngster in the embroidered gown shouted fiercely, "I am Mo Yuanming, West Sea Mo, Royal Family's genius." "Oh, so you're called Mo Yuanming, I know, doggo." Ling Han nodded, following on smoothly. A man in purple clothing snorted and said, "Cut the crap with him. Let's kill him and seize the true dragon's bloodstone." "Yes, Royal Brother Zhengxin Wang." The other 4 people obeyed him strictly. Although they were all well-known figures in Mo family's younger generation, none of them could compare to Mo Zhengxin. He was a super genius that only appeared once in 1,000 years or even millennia, having pure ancestral blood, and being one of the 3 great kings in the North Sea one, having the possibility to advance to the shattering void tier before 50 years old. Mo Yuanming and 3 others surrounded him, while Mo Zhengxin stood with his hands behind his back, feeling it beneath him to attack. The sea race was proud, and as they saw it, for of them joining hands to fight one human was already thinking too highly of him. After all, the presence Ling Han revealed was only in the deity transformation tier, while there was a heaven tier warrior amongst the 4 people. The last chance, hand over the true dragon's bloodstone or else. Die. Chapter 804, Mo Family's Genius. Chapter 804, Mo Family's Genius. I can't be bothered to talk to you guys. Ling Han, however, initiated the attack, forming a seal with his right hand and releasing it towards the 4 people. Golden light instantly radiated all around. It was the earth overturning seal, a mystical power. That large flea could return at any time, and he didn't want to stay here any longer. After all, he cultivated out Sword Heart and could resist against Shattering Void Tyr's oppressive power, but it didn't mean that he could rival Shattering Void Tyr, especially a being like the Flea King. Perhaps even the Lunar King and the likes would get a headache facing it. Outrageous. Mo Yuanming and the others, all Snortita, mere deity transformation tier, human, dared to attack them. They raised their weapons one after another, hacking, slashing, smashing, and thrusting towards Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but itch to try. Sword Heart's miraculous use was to control the weapons of the world, so those who were called Sword King, Saber King, or Fist King all grasped the heart of martial arts. It was as if sitting on a throne, being able to command the world. He extended his left hand and grabbed lightly, and instantly the weapons in Mo Yuanming's and 3 others' hands all let out a gentle sound and started to tremble lightly as if they were about to escape their grasp and fly towards Ling Han. Mo Yuanming and the 3 others were greatly shocked. What was happening? They retreated repeatedly and held tightly onto their weapons, fearing that they really would fly away. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He'd just cultivated out Sword Heart, so it wasn't strong enough yet. Otherwise, all those weapons should fly to his side with a single thought, like imperial bodyguards protecting him. This made him anticipate things even more. How awesome would it be to have great mastery in Sword Heart? And Sword Heart Illumination represented the highest tier in Sword Path, claiming to cut all things, even extinguishing inner demons. Or else how would there be illumination in its name? Sword Heart! Mo Jingxin said in a low voice, a cautious look flashing across his face. What Sword Heart? Impossible. This human's only in the deity transformation tier. How could he have comprehended Sword Heart? Yeah, even shattering void tier powerhouses might not have comprehended Sword Heart. How's this human worthy of such an honor? Mo Yuanming and the 3 others couldn't believe it. In their perception, the heart of martial arts only belonged to the shattering void tier, and a very small minority of them, at that definitely not every shattering void tier elite, had the heart of martial arts. Mo Zhang had a stern expression as he said, "You guys remember Su Xiaoran and Zhang Mo who were with us?" Obviously. Mo Yuanming and the 3 others all nodded. Those 4 were guests that the Sea Emperor had personally received, and despite them being lowly humans, they didn't dare to underestimate them at all. These 2 people also cultivated out Saber Heart and Sword Heart and grasped it more deeply than this human, Mo Jingxin said. What? Mo Yuanming and the 3 others were shocked, covered in goosebumps. Were humans really an extremely lowly race? Those 3 people didn't even reach the shattering void tier, yet they grasped the heart of martial arts that the majority of the shattering void tier elites didn't possess. With that comparison, why did it feel like the sea race was the lower level? Mo Jingxin, however, sighed inwardly. The sea race had the absolute advantage in the cultivation of tiers, and with the blessing of dragon's blood, their physiques far surpassed humans. However, with regards to martial arts comprehension, humans were a notch better. In other words, their bloodline was the reason for their success, but also the reason for their failure. However, he immediately retracted the emotion within and said indifferently, "Don't care about this now. Kill this human and seize the true dragon's bloodstone." Yes, Mo Yuanming and the 3 others shouted and surrounded Ling Han again. Ling Han raised his left hand. He was now filled with interest in how Sword Heart operated, continually practicing, and with every passing moment, he discovered that he made progress in the comprehension of the Sword Heart. So what if he grasped Sword Heart? He's just a human after all, and only in the deity transformation tier. Mo Yuanming and the other 3 attacked, launching attacks toward Ling Han for the second time. Ling Han activated the Sword Heart and influenced the weapons of Mo Yuanming and the 3 others. It was as if the spirit tools in their hands were revolting against them, and their attacks had no accuracy at all. Mo Yuanming and the 3 others were shocked. Without accuracy, how could they keep fighting? If Ling Han were a shattering void tier powerhouse, then so be it, they wouldn't win anyway, but now the opponent was just at the deity transformation tier, yet was making them so helpless. Truly an embarrassing thing. Ah, they were driven mad. Ling Han didn't even dodge once and let them attack at will, but they couldn't even touch the corner of Ling Han's clothes. How could they endure this? The heart of martial arts, was it really that powerful? Ling Han soon lost interest. These 4 people were too weak and had limited use in helping him improve his sword heart. He probably had to fight hand to hand with Su Xiaoran and the small sword emperor, using their saber or sword heart to improve so that his own sword heart could grow rapidly. His pressed forward with his right hand. The earth overturning seal shone with golden light. Pa, 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 sending Mo Yuanming and the 3 others flying. Wah! Mo Yuanming and the 3 others hacked out blood violently, suffering heavy injuries under Ling Han's attack. Good-for-nothings, Mo Jingxin said coldly, disdain written all across his face. They couldn't even take care of a human in the deity transformation tier, so what were they if not good-for-nothings? Ling Han took a glance at him with a smile and said, "You say it like you're not a good-for-nothing yourself." "I'm obviously not a good-for-nothing," Mo Jingxin said in all seriousness. "Whether or not you're a good-for-nothing isn't decided by words alone." Ling Han beckoned him with his finger. "Come, let me beat you till you're convinced," letting you know that you yourself are a good-for-nothing as well. "Is that possible?" Mo Jingxin shook his hands, turning them into dragon claws. "You cultivated out the heart of martial arts, controlling the weapons in the world. But my weapon is my transformed body. Can you influence it?" Ling Han looked at him a few more times and said, "You seem to be quite confident in yourself." "Obviously, I'm from West Sea's Mo family's most outstanding generation. Only 27 years old now, yet already at the 9th layer of the heaven tier, and only 1 step away from the shattering void tier," Mo Zhengxin said proudly. This indeed was impressive, enough to take pride in. This 1 step possibly might not even be crossed in your entire life. Relying on bloodline and limited by bloodline, accomplishments are destined to be limited if you're unable to walk your own path, Ling Han said with a smile. "Talk is cheap. A mere human dares to brag without shame." Mo Zhengxin attacked, arriving before Ling Han in a single stride, reaching out with his right clawed hand and attacking straight at Ling Han's face. If this attack were to hit firmly, then with the dragon claw's sharpness, even Ling Han's body would be heavily injured. Ling Han reached out with his hand and grabbed at the dragon claw. "How dare you? You seek death!" Mo Yuanming and the 3 others snorted. Dragon claws were such a supreme weapon, yet you dared try to take it head on. You really didn't know how to write the word death. "Pa!" Ling Han grabbed the dragon claws, a faint golden light emitting from his left hand. It was the diamond body. He caught it as steady as a great rock. How could that be? Mo Yuanming and the 3 others' eyes almost popped out. How could this happen? For a human to grab onto a dragon claw with his bare palm. Was there still natural order? Was there still the law of the land? Chapter 805, Fighting at Close Quarters. Chapter 805, Fighting at Close Quarters. Even Mo Jingxin was emotionally moved. He found that the opponent's hand was as hard as metal. It wouldn't break or get injured, even when scratched by dragon claws. This was too frightening. However, you are just a human. Are you certain you want to have a close battle with the sea race, especially a ruler of the sea race? It was necessary to know that the strength of the human race was their comprehension of the martial arts. Setting apart and bolstering the technique and skill were considered as the way of the king, but close combat was considered to be in the domain of body cultivators. As it happened, due to the rulers of the sea race having control of dragon's blood, each one of them were body cultivators, and their physical bodies were incomparably tough. In a close-range battle, you don't have impressive physical strength. How long would it take to launch a palm strike? In that little time, I could have launched a few hundred attacks and smashed you to bits. Mo Zhengxin snorted, while his other hand grabbed onto Ling Han. This strike was fast, accurate, and merciless. In such a short distance between them, how was Ling Han able to counter it? If the distance was farther, then with just a lift of his hand, the origin power that burst out would shoot out. It would be fine even if the speed was slower. I could still move my arm faster than your attack would be able to cross that distance. But now, just as your hand was lifted up, my dragon claw has struck and is about to snap off your neck. A cruel smile formed on the corner of Mo Zhengxin's lips. In this one strike, a talented genius of the human race was about to die. This made him feel extremely satisfied in his heart. Where was the thrill in killing ordinary people? The satisfaction in killing 1,000 or 10,000 of them couldn't be compared with killing one genius. Pah! However, he suddenly realized that Ling Han had extended his right hand and grabbed onto his dragon claw again. How could this be? Earlier, he went through a process of charging towards Ling Han. Notwithstanding that, Ling Han had moved back, and there was a small buffer of time, so it was understandable that he had grasped onto his hands. But now, could it be that this human also possessed amazing physical strength? Otherwise, how could he react so quickly? Ling Han smiled lightly and said, "Initially, I still had some appreciation for your capabilities. In the future, you'd be able to provide some contribution in the event of any major disaster. However, you insist on seeking death, so I have no choice but to fulfill your wishes." I admit that I have underestimated you, but you want to kill me? Dream on. Mo Zhengxin sneered, and suddenly aimed a flying kick towards Ling Han. Ling Han lifted his leg to counter the attack. Pung, pung, pung. Both their legs were unceasingly kicking at the other party because both their hands were mutually in each other's grasp. Every strike of their legs wasn't allowed to yield, and thus mutually landed solidly on the other. The sea race had an advantage in physique. The body of Mo Zhengxin was comparable to level 9 precious metal, but Ling Han wasn't weak either and had also reached this level. Theoretically, the match between the two ought to be a tie. But a tie didn't mean that neither of them would be injured. On the contrary, with the impact of every kick, severe injuries were sustained. Both their legs had already become deformed in between hits. This was akin to an incomparably powerful sword capable of crushing any obstacle if two such swords were to collide with each other. Both of them would be battered or even broken apart. The case now was that both of their legs had been twisted, and the degree of distortion was a bit scary, but they still continued to launch kicks towards each other. In this fight, both pledged their all in a stretch of a single breath. If either one of them couldn't hold on, then what would be kicked wasn't the leg, but the vital part of the lower abdomen. If the dantian was smashed, then wouldn't one be crippled? Mo Zhengxin felt secretly regretful. At this point, there was no chance to use any spirit tool or decree. The arms of both parties were holding onto each other. It was impossible to retrieve either. He was a descendant of the Mo clan. He had brought with him several powerful treasures. Each one was enough to kill Ling Han, but now not one of them could be used. How could he not regret it? But who asked him to bully Ling Han being human and want to have a close-range battle with him, intending to crush him in a single exchange? However, he had not expected to encounter such a formidable opponent. Ling Han laughed and said, "You regret it?" Why should I regret it? Do you think that your situation is better than mine? Mo Zhengxin wasn't willing to show any weakness. It's really better than yours. Ling Han circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his fractured thighs immediately returned to normal. What? Mo Zhengxin was shocked. What the fuck is this resilience? Are you really human? Are you sure that you aren't a monster? What about now? Ling Han again sent over a flying kick. Mo Zhengxin suddenly screamed. Although there wasn't any increase in this kick's power, he felt he had received a hard hit upon impact. This was due to a psychological effect. He was badly hit, but Ling Han was completely healed. Such contrast naturally caused him to fall apart mentally and to feel a strong sense of frustration. As a descendant of the true dragon, he had unexpectedly lost to a human in terms of physique. Ling Han did not show any mercy, and launched his kicks even more rapidly. Peng, 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 peng. Once Mo Jingxin's fighting spirit began to waver. He naturally couldn't continue with the same manner of speech. Suddenly, he was being furiously kicked by Ling Han. Peng! He couldn't get a hold of Ling Han again, and was sent flying by his kicks. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth, and a huge part of his lower abdomen had become concave. It appeared a ghastly sight. Mo Jingxin scrambled up with great difficulty. Gasping, he exhaled a breath of air before calming down a little. He then drew out a rolled scroll. Shattering Void Tear Decree. You are very strong, but so what? He sneered. In front of the battle prowess of the Shattering Void Tear, you are insignificant, just like an ant. Die. He suddenly opened up the decree, unleashing a powerful pressure that made the 4 people, including Mo Yuanming, involuntarily kneel down as their skin split and flesh ruptured. It was as if a Shattering Void Tear elite had arrived in person. But it wasn't just the imposing manner. Even if they were rulers of martial arts, their bodies, nevertheless, still crumbled. Ling Han gave a light smile. With a wave of his right hand, 108 daggers suddenly appeared and formed the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. Immediately, an ice dragon materialized, facing towards the sky, and gave a thundering roar. Go! As Ling Han held out his hand and pointed with a finger, the ice dragon rushed with killing intent towards Mo Jingxin. The decree had just been opened when a burly man came out, exuding the powerful aura of the Shattering Void Tear. He saw the oncoming attack of the ice dragon, and immediately went up to meet it. Peng, 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 the 2 sides fought, and the battle prowess of the Shattering Void Tear instantly crushed all the surrounding mountain rocks to pieces. If it was not for this place being the ghostly dragon cave, the stars in the world would be out of luck again. Who knew how many will be crushed? That man was being suppressed. What? The group of 5, including Mo Jingxin, all had expressions of disbelief on their faces. This was their biggest trump card. In this ghostly dragon cave, which Shattering Void Tear elites couldn't enter, wouldn't a Shattering Void Tear decree be amazing enough? But now, he was being completely suppressed by one side. Ling Han understood it clearly in his heart. How strong could the strength sealed in a decree be? Due to the double restriction of the maker and the materials of the decree itself, it was already very remarkable to be able to achieve battle prowess surpassing 5 stars. In the Shattering Void Tear, 1 star was the difference between heaven and earth, not to mention 2 stars or more. With a roar from the ice dragon, the decree was torn to pieces. No, Mo Jingxin screamed, but was strangled to death by the ice dragon without any doubt. Ling Han was going for the kill. He just wanted to kill the group of 4, including Mo Yuanming, but he was shocked when he saw that the Flea King was flying back in a distance away with the astonishing speed of a bullet. When the big guy saw that the true dragon bloodstone had disappeared, he would definitely flip out. He'd better retreat. Ling Han also couldn't be bothered with taking action against the 4 people, including Mo Yuanming. They were of no importance in his eyes anyway. He leaped up and in a flash disappeared into the distance. Chapter 806, Barge Through. Chapter 806, Barge Through. Ling Han rushed to the place which had been agreed upon with Hunyao. Upon arriving, he saw that the little girl had arrived long ago, and was sitting on the stone waving her legs, appearing bored, her small lips pouting in a very unhappy expression. After discovering that Ling Han had come over, she groaned and said, Ling Han, you are too slow. You've made Niu waited for so long. Sorry. Ling Han quickly smiled and said, Niu has really done me a huge favor this time." Niu immediately became extremely pleased. Clapping her hands, she said, "Niu is the best. Niu really is the best." Ling Han patted Niu's head. This little girl was indeed very special. "Let's take a look at the harvest first." Ling Han and Niu entered the Black Tower together. He then called Helian Sun Shui over. She was holding Ling Jian Shui, and they both came together before the huge true dragon bloodstone. Iya. Ling Jian Shui wriggled his little hands and feet, trying hard to break out from within Helian Sun Shui's arms. Oh! Ling Han was stunned. Did this little guy feel the power of the true dragon bloodstone? He paused for a while and said, "Sun Shui, let go of him and we shall see." Naturally, it would be impossible to have any problems within the Black Tower. Accordingly, Helian Sun Shui put her son on the ground. The little guy immediately used both his hands and feet and charged towards the true dragon bloodstone. Although he hadn't reached age of 1 year yet, his brute strength and speed were incomparably impressive. Very quickly, he ran to the front of the true dragon bloodstone and climbed up on it 1 step at a time. When he reached the peak, he comfortably lay face down on top of its surface, just like the Flea King previously. Ling Han immediately noticed that on the little guy's body, there were flickering streaks of draconic patterns emitting a faint radiance. There was outpouring of dragon's might. Moreover, it was consistently getting stronger. He'd absorb the true dragon's blood and keep getting stronger. For the descendants of the true dragon's blood was definitely a rare treasure, and perhaps even something irreplaceable. Ling Han walked over and put his hand on the true dragon bloodstone. Immediately, the 9 dragons' tyrant body are automatically circulated to extract the essence of the bloodstone, strengthening his body and enhancing his physique slightly, with a substantial increase in strength. He has a sudden urge to completely draw out the energy within the bloodstone and let his brute force instantly soar upwards into heaven tier, or even stronger. He promptly restrained himself. It wouldn't be a good thing for strength to increase too rapidly. One would need to have a strong enough mental state to control such power. Despite being of the heaven tier in his past life, his battle prowess wasn't strong at all, and the past he might not even be a match for the current him now. He didn't have an edge in mental state. It could be said that in addition to striving forward on the familiar road towards the heaven tier, he had completely surpassed his previous life, and this time it was only within a span of just over 5 years. When he thought about this, it made him feel as though he was in a dream. After reaching the peak of the deity transformation tier, it was necessary to build a solid foundation in that state before breaking through. He couldn't leave any regret, otherwise it might bring about a huge impact. Ling Han retracted his hand and said, "Small tower, how will this kid absorb the true dragon's blood? Will there be any problem?" The small tower emerged and calmly replied, "His physique is good, much stronger than yours. You'd better die soon. That way, your son will inherit the Black Tower and definitely be more outstanding than you." Fuck! The corner of Ling Han's lips twitched. "Even though you were praising my son, you need not belittle me so much, right? This proud tower. One day, I will make it kneel down and proclaim its defeat. However, it's good if there's no problem. Just let this kid lie on top of the stone to absorb the true dragon's blood. I really don't know what kind of height his brute force can reach once he has activated his spirit base. Flower blossom tier? Spiritual infant tier." 3 people, including Ling Han, came out of the Black Tower. The most precious treasure was, of course, the true dragon's tooth. By comparison, the others were just sesame seeds. Even the true dragon bloodstone could only be regarded as a slightly larger sesame seed. Arg! Just as they exited the Black Tower, they heard a terrible roar, which completely shook them to the point that their skin was undulating like waves. It was that Flea King, It came back, only to discover that the true dragon bloodstone wasn't there. It naturally blew its top off and bellowed so violently as if it wanted to destroy this part of the realm. "Let's go." The three, including Ling Han, left at once, to resolutely take on this 15-eyed corpse king, level flea king, was simply courting death. Only a fool would do such a thing. After running for over 100 miles, although the roars could still be heard, the ripples in the air finally could not affect them anymore. This was precisely what a shattering void tier elite was. With just a roar, it could cause shock injury to a heaven tier elite. After running for several hundred miles more, the roars finally disappeared completely, and the three people sighed in relief. Fortunately, this big guy did not pursue them and attack everywhere. Otherwise, if they were targeted, would they be able to stand up to it, even if they managed to awaken the Revere Life Sword? They no longer deliberately searched for other treasures, be it true dragon bloodstone or the dragon's blood grass. Now they were focused on the true dragon's tooth. After all, they didn't know how much time they would spend on the 4th floor. 2 days later, they came to the end of the 3rd floor. Here, there wasn't any passageway or tall mountain made of bones. There was only a seemingly ordinary portal, but it was connected to a completely different world, and the opposite side was an ocean of flames. Hee, finally I've waited until you came. Amidst the cold sneer, Su Xiao Ran's group of 4 could be seen appearing one after the other, blocking the passageway to the portal. Ling Han smiled and said, "To have made all of you wait so long, I am truly sorry." "It doesn't matter. You can compensate us with your life," the small Sword Emperor said coldly. "Then, I am even more sorry, as I value my life very much and have no intention of using it to compensate anyone." Ling Han gazed at the 4 people coldly. With his own strength, he wasn't afraid of these 4 people. Even if his battle prowess fell short of theirs, his body could continuously heal, making him the person with the last laugh. However, everyone had the ability to fight a stronger opponent. With the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe, they would probably need to get the Flea King from earlier to come over to be equally matched. He immediately made a decision. He was going to rush forward and first get his hands on the true dragon's tooth. As for the 4 people, they could be dealt with later. Die. Su Xiao Ran immediately wielded Absolute Saber, while Son of Lightning also took out the Mountain and River Axe. Held high in his hands, this treasured tool had been awakened, exuding an incomparably overbearing aura. Ling Han pulled Hellion Sun Shui and Hunyo back into the Black Tower. Anyway, the other 4 people already knew that he had a spatial divine tool, so it didn't matter if he used it in front of them. "You want to barge through us? You are too naive." The small Sword Emperor sneered and also wielded a treasured sword. With the circulation of the sword's intent, this treasured tool was awakened, exuding a fierce breath. Even if it did not reach the shattering void tier, it wouldn't be far off. Donglinger also wielded a sword. She hadn't mastered Sword Heart yet, but she also possessed her own formidable power. The power within her blood was unleashed, and at her back, 2 long wings spread out, together with a phoenix tail woven with light and shadow. It was like she had become a colorful phoenix. The 4 young rulers joined forces to stop Ling Han. In addition to the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe, it could be said that they made a well-fortified barricade, even for shattering void tier. There wasn't more than a few capable of charging through their ranks. Ling Han drew out the Revere Life Sword and smiled. "Then I will show you." Chapter 807 Trap. Chapter 807 Trap. Without hesitation, Ling Han shot out, directly heading for the passage that led to the 4th floor. As long as he entered, Su Xiao Ran and the others would naturally be unable to follow. The Revere Life Sword, due to the proximity of the aura of the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe, automatically awakened. Its patterns glowed, and its killing intent blazed into the skies. Ling Han did not summon the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. His intention now was to barge his way in and not defeat these 4 people. The difficulty level was completely different. How could it be that the Revere Life sword would be unable to sustain a single combined strike of the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe? You had to be kidding. Get back! The 4 young elites combined their attacks and even used such powerful killing tools like the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe. Even Shattering Void tier elites were practically unable to outshine them. Yet Ling Han forced his way through. The Revere Life sword exuded endless light from its patterns, wrapping him tightly within as he charged towards that doorway. Hum, hum, hum. In the fierce exchange, Ling Han could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood, yet forced his way through the combined barricade of the 4 young rulers, and threw himself into that doorway. The moment he entered, he immediately drew out the Flower of Dead Souls. This amazing flower that came from the netherworld instantly shone with a dark light that suppressed the blazing flames surrounding him. These flames had absolutely no effect on the physical body. Instead, they directly affected the soul, attempting to burn his soul to ashes. And the Flower of Dead Souls just so happened to be capable of suppressing them. As for why it could do so, Ling Han could not fathom it either. He merely knew that the effects were indeed excellent. He turned around, yet saw that the expressions on the faces of Su Xiaoran and the others looked very odd. They did not look at all defeated that he had managed to barge in, but were rather wearing cold smirks, like they were saying, "You're a stupid idiot." Ling Han, we already know that you have a spatial divine tool, yet still deliberately revealed the use of the Flower of Dead Souls. Could it be that you take us for idiots? Su Xiaoran sneered. Dong Linger continued, "You're wrong. We deliberately said those words for you to hear. The Flower of Dead Souls is the key to enter into the 4th floor. True, but it's merely one of them. The other key is one has to form the heart of martial arts. Otherwise, you would still be burnt to ashes. After you're dead, we will enter and take away the Flower of Dead Souls. Anyways, in your current condition, you would not be able to go far," the small sword emperor said calmly. Ling Han gave an "oh" and smiled. "You all deliberately say it now because you want to detain me here as much as possible. On the other side, you have sealed the exit so that I would only be able to remain here, and you can easily retrieve the Flower of Dead Souls later. Now that I think about it, you all did not try your best to stop me previously. That's right. Using this natural killing zone to eliminate you. Wouldn't it be much simpler?" The Son of Lightning said calmly. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Since you all know that I have a spatial divine tool, could it be that you don't know that I merely have to duck inside, and it will not matter how horrible the conditions outside are? What could they do to me?" "Humph, you think that just because we have never seen a spatial divine tool before, we don't know the use of a spatial divine tool." Dong Linger snorted derisively. "Spatial divine tools are merely convenient, but could not completely seal off the environment. Even if you hide inside, you would not be spared from death." Ling Han grinned and said, "Then even if I died, I would not allow the Flower of Dead Souls or the spatial divine tool to benefit you. You all did not find it previously. That is the case now, and in the future you would not be able to do it either." Hearing these words, Su Xiaoran and the others frowned. This was indeed their worry. They had only heard of the existence of spatial divine tools, but had never seen one before. So how would they know how to retrieve it? Su Xiaoran pondered, then said, "Hand over the Flower of Dead Souls and the spatial divine tool, and we can spare you." When he saw Ling Han's uncaring expression, he stretched out his hand and declared, "I can swear." "We can swear too," the other said as well. In comparison with the valuable True Dragon's tooth and spatial divine tool, Ling Han's life could naturally be set aside for the moment. Anyways, he had not yet become too powerful. There were many elites in the 5 great sects that could easily kill him. Ling Han laughed heartily and said, "Do you all not know that I am a person who is unafraid of death? I will not stay around to chat anymore, bye. He turned around and left. This was something that Su Xiaoran and the others had not expected. In their opinion, Ling Han was definitely a smart person. And how could it be possible that a smart person would make this kind of choice? This was a situation in which neither side won, and the most they would suffer was mild damage. They had merely lost a flower of dead souls, but in Ling Han's case he would lose his life. No matter how they thought about it, Ling Han did not seem to be the person who is unafraid of death that he had flaunted himself as. Could it be he has formed Sword Heart? Su Xiaoran's expression changed drastically. He had fought with Ling Han the most, and could be considered more familiar with Ling Han's personality than the others. The expressions of the others changed as well. This was not impossible. Previously, Ling Han had already touched the border of the Sword Heart, which allowed him to be unaffected by Su Xiaoran and the small Sword Emperor, and killed Jiaming successfully. Any other person would not be able to do so in such a short amount of time. But how could Ling Han be any other person? Then this would be a little terrible. Sword Heart added with the flower of dead souls would be enough to resist the soul-burning flames of the fourth floor, and it would definitely not be difficult for him to obtain the true dragon's tooth. And it would be of no use for them to stand guard here, either. The moment the time limit was reached, Ling Han would naturally be directly sent out of the ghostly dragon cave. We'll stand guard here. If the time comes and we are still unable to capture Ling Han, we will immediately return to the middle state and ask the ultimate elites to move. We must definitely kill this man. That's right. With the true dragon's tooth and a spatial divine tool in his possession, there is definitely a need to get the ultimate elites to move. The four of them all sat at the entrance and waited patiently. In their eyes, there was only one valuable thing in this ghostly dragon cave, and that was the true dragon's tooth. Thus, they could not bother to waste time to search for other treasures. Ling Han's hand gripped the flower of dead souls. As he walked in the sea of flames, his steps were steady, and he was extremely calm. Setting aside their ability to burn the soul, the damage that these flames inflicted on the physical body was practically zero. Furthermore, with the protection of the flower of dead souls and the support of the Sword Heart, he had nothing to fear here. He took great strides forwards. The structure of this fourth floor was very simple. It was merely a large passage all the way to the end. Thus, he had no other choice but to walk forwards. Apparently, the true dragon's tooth lay at the end of this passage. However, no one was capable of obtaining it, and they could only look upon it from afar. The passage was very long. After a half-day's time, Ling Han finally saw the end. An altar made of stone appeared ahead of him. It was huge, but there was a ring of purple light that had solidified around and encircled the altar. Until now, no one had been able to pass through this ring of light. Otherwise, if anyone had been able to pass through and come back out, how could it be that they had not been able to retrieve the true dragon's tooth? In the middle of the altar, there lay a colossal fong. It was 30 meters long and was completely brilliant white, seeming like a beautiful work of art. Merely the sight of it gave a kind of pleasant feeling. Moreover, even though he was standing so far away from it, Ling Han could still sense the boundless might emitted by the fong. The True Dragon's Tooth. Chapter 808, True Dragon's Tooth. Chapter 808, True Dragon's Tooth. The True Dragon's Tooth was almost within reach. Ling Han walked forwards. He had already come all this way, so no matter what, he wanted to make an attempt. Even if, at the end, he had to use the Revere Life sword to slash at it brutally, or even ask Small Tower to move, he wanted to give it a try. The divine item was left behind by a true dragon one, even in the immortal realm. This was something that would be fought over, wasn't it? When Ling Han walked in front of that purple halo of light, the halo rippled as if it was water and wrapped around him. He looked down and saw that the flower of dead souls in his grip was exuding a faint light that seemed to form some kind of echo with this purple halo. Realization dawned on him. If this wasn't the case, then so many people managed to come here before, though. They all died eventually. Why was there a need to have the flower of dead souls to be capable of obtaining the true dragon's tooth? Because it was not difficult to reach this place. The difficulty lay in how to pass through this purple halo, and the flower of dead souls played the role of a key. How strange! Ling Han frowned, and a feeling of confusion rose in his heart. He did not take it to heart, though. He had already entered the altar, and the next thing he had to do was to merely draw the true dragon's tooth into the Black Tower. Then, not even immortals would be able to snatch it away from him if it descended into the lower realm. Wang, wang, wang. He walked on the altar. Multiple stone bricks glowed, forming some kind of strange pattern that flowed together unendingly as if some kind of mysterious melody was being played, yet it was a soundless performance. He stopped, and a powerful feeling of alert rose in his heart. If there was any danger that he could not cope with, he would enter the Black Tower at the first moment, and definitely not try to be brave. After all, the strongest dragon in the world was buried under this place. He stopped, but the stone bricks were still glowing, fluctuating in brightness, forming some kind of rhythm. A faint aura was circulating, ancient and aged yet powerful, as if it had experienced uncountable millennia. This was left behind by that old dragon. Ling Han observed for a moment, and when he discovered that only the stone bricks were glowing in intervals, and no other change was happening, he once again walked forwards. The true dragon's tooth was right in front of him, and there was absolutely no reason for him to give up. Finally, he arrived in front of the true dragon's tooth. He slowly stretched out his hand and pressed down on the true dragon's tooth. Next, he merely had to wrap his divine sense around this dragon fang, and would then be able to take it into the Black Tower. Whoa! The flower of dead souls in his hand shone brilliantly, yet was also rapidly wilting. One after another, the wilted petals dropped as if its essence had been sucked out, causing it to become dark and lifeless. It no longer had the slightest bit of magic to it anymore. Right at this moment, the true dragon's tooth also exuded blazing light, which was incomparably blinding. Even Ling Han could not stare at it directly, and he hurriedly turned his head and closed his eyes. But there was no slowing down to his movement to draw the true dragon's tooth into the Black Tower. His divine sense had already wrapped fully around the dragon fang. Draw inside. Ling Han's expression changed in spite of himself, realized there was actually no way for him to draw the true dragon's tooth into the Black Tower. How was that possible? There was only one thing that the Black Tower could not take in, and that was an individual possessing sentience. Only if this being did not resist his will would the Black Tower be capable of taking it in. But now this was obviously a dragon fang, so why couldn't he take it in the Black Tower? The dragon fang had its own individual will? Or, in other words, the dragon fang was a divine item, and by nature could not be taken inside the Black Tower. Ling Han did not understand, but now he could not open his eyes at all, so there was naturally no way for him to examine what strange thing was happening to this dragon fang. It had not changed in who knew how many millennia, so why had it experienced some kind of unfathomable change the moment he came? The flower of dead souls. Instantly, realization dawned on him. Previously, though many people had come here, none of them had brought the flower of dead souls with them. Only he was the exception, which then triggered some mysterious change in the true dragon's tooth. But what exactly was this change? After at least 15 minutes, the light given off by the true dragon's tooth finally dimmed. Ling Han opened his eyes and saw that the flower of dead souls in his hand had completely wilted, leaving behind only a bare stem. He turned to look at the true dragon's tooth. This colossal fang that was as white as jade was becoming increasingly translucent and had even become transparent. Although there were tightly woven patterns covering it, it did not prevent him from being able to see inside the true dragon's tooth, where there seemed to be a ball of something. He could not distinguish what exactly it was, though. The patterns were very effective at protection, but he could vaguely see that the ball was moving. This was extremely astonishing. True Dragon's tooth had been abandoned for who knew how many millennia, but there was actually some kind of life form nurtured inside. It had to be a life form, one that possessed its own will. That was why it could resist being taken in by the Black Tower. The feeling of unease in Ling Han's heart grew increasingly stronger. He kept feeling as if he had fallen into some kind of trap, but it had already gone so far, so he still activated the Eye of Truth, intending to have a clear look. Shock! Ling Han was startled. With the Eye of Truth, he finally had a clear view. That ball of something being nurtured inside the dragon fang was actually a little boy. He looked to be about 6 or 7 years old, and was younger than even Hu Niu. He looked quite handsome and was completely naked, but Ling Han could find no traits on him that declared him a descendant of the dragon race. This dragon tooth was really absurd. In the long passage of time, it actually developed its own will and attained new life. That's not right. Just recall Corpse Boss and Corpse, to even though they were revived corpses, they had at least developed from a whole corpse. A dragon tooth could actually nurture out a new life. Wasn't that a little bit too far? Ka. Just as his imagination ran wildly, one crack after another appeared on the dragon tooth. It was as if a spider's web had enveloped the whole fang, and then with a pung the whole dragon tooth shattered. Then a little boy stood on the ground. Ha! I have finally come back to life, this little boy said in a voice filled with childish innocence, yet his tone was old and mature. He cast a look on Ling Han, and could not help but haughtily exclaim, Junior, why are you not kneeling down now that you've seen your ancestor? Ling Han was stunned at first where had this monster come from, but then he immediately discovered that this little boy was merely in the body refining tier, so what wariness would he still have? He directly stretched out his hand to grab him. Insolence, to actually dare treat me so rudely. Just see how I shall deal with you. The little boy said angrily. Wang. A terrifying dragon's might exuded from him. It was extremely noble and majestic, and even Xinyu Tong and Wenren Jie would not be able to stop themselves from kneeling down immediately in face of such pressure. This had nothing to do with cultivation level, but was pure domination of bloodline. But what effect would this dragon's intimidation have on Ling Han? He was not a member of the dragon race, and had already formed Sword Heart. Additionally, he also had the Black Tower inside supporting him, so the thing he feared least was this kind of mental pressure. His hand grabbed out, and the little boy had already fallen into his grasp. Ling Han laughed, raised his large hand, and began spanking the little boy's behind. Pa. It immediately caused the little boy to erupt into loud wails, his little face completely red. This was too humiliating. How high was his status? Yet he had actually had his behind spanked by a junior. Moreover, it was his bare backside which made him want to spit out blood in infuriated shame. Junior, stop immediately. Do you know who I am? The little boy screamed loudly as he continued to struggle endlessly. Ling Han's hand did not stop falling as he continued to spank the little boy's behind like mad, and said calmly, If I had not guessed wrongly, you must be that alternative dragon. Chapter 809. Reappearance of the Alternative Dragon. Chapter 809. Reappearance of the Alternative Dragon. The little boy was startled in spite of himself and asked, Why would you make such a guess? Fuck, if you weren't that alternative dragon, why would you be able to absorb the essence of the true dragon's tooth? Furthermore, you're acting so mature and old that merely the sight of you would make one think in that direction. Ling Han said with exasperation, but did not continue the spanking either. He casually tossed the little boy over to one side, then threw a piece of clothing over. The little boy slipped it on, but this was Ling Han's clothing, and for him it was really a little too big, so long that even his hands could no longer be seen, the sleeves dragging onto the floor. He could not help but feel depressed and asked, "Is there nothing smaller?" "Yes, but they're all for girls. Do you want them?" Ling Han asked. The little boy hesitated for a moment, then with a shake of his head said, "I'll just wear this one then." He rolled up the sleeves and trouser legs, but the clothes were too large, so he still looked a bit out of place, causing Ling Han to laugh in spite of himself. "Since you already know who I am, and yet you still dare to laugh at me, are you tired of living?" the little boy threatened fiercely. "Pa!" Ling Han delivered a knock to his head, instantly causing the little boy to grab his head in pain. "What is it? Have I not beaten you into submission just now?" The little boy was confused and asked, "Why are you not affected by my dragon's might? Although I have lost all my cultivation, my dragon's might is still the strongest in the world. Any descendant of the dragon race would be affected by me." Ling Han clicked his tongue and said, "Open your damn eyes and look carefully. What part of me looks like the descendant of the dragon race?" "What? You actually are not a descendant of the dragon race." The little boy's face was filled with disbelief. "But I obviously sense the aura of dragon race from you." This was normal. His wife was a member of the dragon race, and his son also had the bloodline of the dragon race. Furthermore, he was also cultivating the 9 dragons tyrant body art, so what was odd about him having a little dragon smell one? Ling Han picked up the little boy in a single move and said, "I actually forgot to ask you, what are you called again?" The little boy worked hard at presenting a serious expression, crossing his arms over his chest, pretending to be reserved. However, Ling Han was holding onto the collar of his shirt, and his body was endlessly wriggling around, which instantly caused this air of utmost seriousness that he was trying to put on to completely vanish. He flew into a rage from the humiliation and said, "Even if you are not a descendant of the dragon race, I am your senior by who knows how many years. You need to maintain appropriate respect towards me. Besides, this realm still needs me to come out and save it." A thought streaked through Ling Han's head. In the past, the alternative dragon was incomparably powerful, and even the immortals that descended could not kill him. So he definitely had to know the truth of the reckoning. Now, after passing through endless years and being reborn, he would definitely not be satisfied to die here of old age, completely helpless. The so-called saving, could it also be indicating the splitting open of the skies? He did not ask directly. Instead, he said, "Don't think that I don't know. This damn place can only be entered with the flower of dead souls. It must be your trick and has a definite relation with your rebirth. You have to know, I was the one who brought the flower of dead souls, so I am your benefactor. You still put on the airs of a senior with me? Is it that your backside is itching for another spanking again?" Although the flower of dead souls had been brought by Su Xiaorant's group, did Ling Han need to explain it so clearly to the alternative dragon? The little boy's aura could not help but weaken. Ling Han was right. The key to his rebirth was the flower of dead souls. This was something that could not be missed, and from this aspect, Ling Han was indeed his savior. He humphed and retorted, "Fine, I shall tell you my true name. My surname is Helion, with the name of Tianyin, and I am the strongest dragon of this realm." He was very proud of himself, which caused Ling Han to look down on him in spite of himself. From the looks of it, after he had gotten a new life, this alternative dragon's personality had also undergone a great change. Otherwise, what need was there for an ultimate elite with 20 stars of shattering void tier to be so tsundere? This kind of existence had absolutely no need to seek the approval of others, and would be able to match even the immortals that descended into the lower realm, being powerful to an indescribable level. However, the surname of Helion? Could he be the old ancestor of Helion Rome? Fuck! Then he definitely could not let him find out that his wife was Helion Sun Shui. Otherwise, this guy would definitely act tsundere to the death, and put on the airs of an elder in front of him. Ling Han stretched out his hand, a clear threat, before he asked, "You have obviously died for who knows how many millennia, so how have you come back to life?" With the powerful existence that I am, what is so strange about me being able to live a second life? Helian Tianyan humphed. Ling Han was naturally not going to believe him. Even in the immortal realm, it was immeasurably difficult to reincarnate a soul, so it was obviously even more difficult here in the lower realm. However, this was their first encounter, so even if he had saved his life, how was it possible that Helian Tianyan would easily reveal his secrets? If you wanted to know the secret of another, you'd have to reveal your own secret. Only then would you be able to win the trust of others. Ling Han asked, "You mentioned saving this world. Were you referring to splitting open the skies?" Even if this was the ghostly dragon cave, which could claim to be an independent plane, the moment Ling Han said the word splitting open the skies, thunder still rang out around them. Helian Tianyan could not help but be stunned and exclaimed, "You monster! You are actually not tolerated by the heavens. No, no, no. You have the potential to threaten this world. That is why you were sensed by the world, which wanted to draw out a tribulation of thunder to eliminate you." Ling Han's face darkened in spite of himself. To have an old monster from who knew how many millennia ago point at his face and call him a monster, no matter what, still made him feel awkward. How long have I actually slept that there would actually appear such a strange person in the world? Helian Tianyan grabbed his head and exclaimed, "Wah! And I still wanted to rescue all the life in this world and become the Messiah, but I never thought that my business would be snatched from me. Fuck. Why didn't I wake up earlier? Restrain your grief." Ling Han said from the side, "No one died in my family, so what grief would I feel?" Helian Tianyan said with irritation. Ling Han was momentarily speechless. Looks like this alternative dragon should have been a joker in the past as well. As the saying went, it was easier to change mountains and rivers than to alter one's character. Even if he had been changed from the experience of obtaining a second life, it was not possible that he would have changed so much. Only if he were a natural joker would he be like this. However, you mentioned splitting open the skies, so you should already know the truth of the reckoning of the immortal realm, Helian Tianyan said, quickly regaining his composure. Ling Han nodded and asked, "In the past, you did not shatter the void and become an immortal. Was it because you discovered the sky-sealing great formation?" "That's right. Initially, I thought that after I cultivated to the highest degree, it should not be a problem to shatter the void. Unexpectedly, I was still not a match." Helian Tianyan sighed. "Thankfully, I had an alternative plan. Though I suffered serious injuries at that time, I still managed to escape back here and died seated here. However, I nurtured a sliver of my divine sense inside the dragon Fong to seek life from my death. When I was young, I obtained a divine herb that would allow the soul to undergo a metamorphosis. Thus, I simply hardened my heart, abandoned my original body, and reformed my body with the true dragon's tooth. I have cultivated this Fong to the level of a true dragon's, and even in the immortal realm, it would be an awesome treasure. Now, after uncountable years, condensing the essence of the dragon Fong into my body, and taking the final step with the help of the flower of dead souls, I have finally come back to life again. At that time, though my body was already very powerful, I was still not strong enough to bear the thoughts of all life of this world. But this time, I will definitely be able to. Chapter 810, Taking a Disciple. Chapter 810, Taking a Disciple. In his last life, Helian Tianyan had wanted to split open the skies. But splitting open the skies would require the establishment of a nation. After all, the power of an individual was limited, while this realm did not meet the conditions for letting someone become immortal. Without the support of power of the nation, no one's power would be strong to the level of being able to split open the skies. Even immortals could not do so. Releasing extreme amounts of power would only cause them to be repelled by the world. But it was a different case with the support of power of the nation because the original cultivation level had not exceeded the world's limit. The world also had rules that it needed to follow, Otherwise, splitting open the skies would only be empty words. But using the power of the nation as support by itself put a massive burden on an individual. So how could it be done without a physique strong enough? Even with the sturdiness and strength of physique of a member of the dragon race, and the power of the alternative dragon at that time, he still had not chosen to split open the skies. That was because he knew that it was not possible for him to bear the power of the nation formed by the combined thoughts of all life in this realm. In this life, Hellion Tianyan used the true dragon's tooth to reform his body. Then, when he once again cultivated back to the shattering void tier, his physique would naturally be even stronger. Perhaps he would then really be capable of withstanding the combined thoughts of all life on this realm. However, now that there is a monster like you, I can be more relaxed, and there is no need for me to take the responsibility of splitting open the skies onto my shoulders. Hellion Tianyan laughed. Even the world moved because of you, which clearly indicated that the chance of you succeeding is incomparably high. Ling Han pondered, then replied, You are really lucky that you managed to wait until the arrival of the flower of dead souls. This thing is an item of the netherworld. Perhaps in a whole lifetime it would never come to you. I don't believe that this true dragon's tooth can allow your soul to be preserved eternally. Hee. That's why I said I am a very fortunate person. It was destined that I would be able to come back to life, Hellion Tianyan said, smiling. Then you plan to help me? Ling Han questioned. Naturally, even if I live another life, I still do not have the confidence of breaking through that sky-sealing great formation. So I can only place my hopes on splitting open the skies, Hellion Tianyan said. When he spoke of the sky-sealing great formation, he could not help but shiver. At the time, it caused him to suffer tremendous injury, and he had almost died, so he naturally still had lingering fear. Ling Han laughed and retorted, You are only in the body refining tier presently, so what can you help me with? Pei, my current body is nurtured from the true dragon's tooth, and added with the fact that I had reached the human apex in my last life, I will be walking on an old path in this life, so there will not be the slightest bottleneck. You merely need to give me a few years' time, as well as enough resources for cultivation. How difficult would it be for me to return to the peak? Moreover, my dragon's might is only stronger than it was before. Whatever dragon in front of me can only bow down obediently in submission, Hellion Tianyan declared proudly. This effect was indeed quite useful. If Hellion Tianyan could conquer the seas, with him and Ma Duo Bao on land, then both sides would need only combine their respective territories when the time came. So wouldn't the whole realm be settled? Not bad, not bad. Although he had been scammed by the alternative dragon once, he did still get something out of it. Ling Han turned to look and said, However, the flower of dead souls has been absorbed by you, so how should we leave? Stupid, this place has been formed from my body and is used to protect my soul. I use the true dragon's tooth to attract others to bring the flower of dead souls here. Now that I was reborn, there is naturally no need for this place to exist anymore, Hellion Tianyan replied disdainfully. True, though his current abilities were so weak that a single finger would be able to push him over, it did not change the fact that he had once been an alternative dragon. Ling Han hesitated, then said, I'll introduce you to a few people. Yeah. Hellion Tianyan appeared very astonished. There was not even a soul around here. So how are you going to introduce me to a few people? But he had barely finished the town when he saw a few extra people appear suddenly around him. This gave him a scare. Then he said in absolute shock, Spatial divine tool. An actual spatial divine tool. This brat is indeed loved by the fate, actually being able to get his hands on a spatial god tool. His eyes swept over, and he could not hold back as he said, These are descendants of the dragon race. I can smell it on them, he said, pointing at Hellion Sun Shui and Ling Jian Shui. Meanwhile, Hellion Sun Shui stared at Ling Han questioningly and asked, Who is this kid? Your ancestor. Helian Tianyin said in a very aged manner. Helian Sun Shui was naturally not going to believe him. This tiny kid actually dared to take advantage of her? She immediately aimed her hand to knock his head. However, her hand had just stretched out Wenwing. Supreme dragon's might exuded from him, causing her delicate body to instantly weaken. Her legs could not even support her body properly anymore, and she collapsed backwards. Ling Han stretched out his arms and caught her in his embrace. Ling Jianshui, meanwhile, was furious. Although the little guy was only half a year old, his intelligence could not be measured with normal standards. He immediately jumped out of Helian Sun Shui's arms, crouched on the ground, and directly howled at Helian Tianyin. Helian Tianyin was stunned. This little babe has a very dense true dragon bloodline to actually be capable of matching my dragon's might. Aya! He emitted a terrible scream. That was because Ling Jianshui had already shot over and gave him a direct punch to the fact, causing him to fall onto the ground. Although he had once been an alternative dragon, and his dragon's might was indeed terrifying in terms of ability, he was only in the body refining tier. And what about Ling Jianshui? His brute strength had already reached the level of the gushing spring tier, so naturally the battle prowess of both parties was on completely different levels. The little guy gave him a harsh beating, and Helian Tianyin could only wail in pain, who asked him to bully the former's mom. Yet Helian Tianyin was only delighted as he said, "This little guy is not bad. I want to take him as my disciple and teach him the unsurpassed ultimate secrets of the dragon race." A weird expression appeared on Ling Han's face, and he asked, "Are you sure you want to take my son as your disciple?" "Your son?" Helian Tianyin was astonished and said, "No wonder his bloodline is so pure, and he can even actually resist my dragon's might. Haha, I am definitely going to take in this brat as my disciple. Whoever dares fight me over him, I will become hostile." Completely losing his image, he was stepped on by Ling Jianshui, still crying out loudly. Ling Han mumbled something in a low voice to Helian Sun Shui, causing Helian Sun Shui's beautiful eyes to widen. This was really her ancestor. But if Helian Tianyin wanted to take Ling Jianshui as his disciple, then wouldn't he be on the same level as herself and Ling Han? What a mess that would be by then. Ling Han nodded and acquiesced. "All right, for the sake of your seniority, I will allow my son to become your disciple." He went over and picked Ling Jianshui up, then said, "Now that you've taken in your disciple, what about the first meeting gift? In any case, you're an alternative dragon, so if you're not generous enough, others would really look down on you." Helian Tianyin laughed drily. His body had transformed into the ghostly dragon cave. Furthermore, so many years had passed, and he was really going around bare too, so what worthy treasure could he produce? He hurriedly said, "I will teach all that I know to this brat, and this is more valuable than anything else." "Forget it, I knew you were poor." Ling Han casually tossed out a few spirit herbs and said, "Here, take them and refine them. Quickly increase your abilities. Don't let it be that you would not be able to match your own disciple in power." Helian Tianyin chortled, and was not the slightest bit embarrassed. He grabbed the spirit herbs and began chewing. In a short moment, the entire aura of his body spiked wildly, and he had actually broken through to the element gathering tier. Indeed, he did not have any kind of bottleneck in his cultivation, and did not need any kind of accumulation of power. Breaking through was as simple as drinking water to him. Chapter 8:11 Dragon Might Finally Performs. Chapter 8:11 Dragon Might Finally Performs. Ling Han simply set out a feast, using all kinds of precious meat and ingredients. These included the top-grade demonic beast meat, the Mariety's treasured pearl, and dragon blood tyrant ginseng, all of which were put together in a pot and cooked. Although he was completely lacking in culinary skills, It didn't change the fact that these were excessively precious, top-grade ingredients. Just by putting them together to be cooked, a tasty fragrance had already assailed their nostrils and made their fingers twitch. Hellion Tianyin was also pathetically salivating, saying, "Oh, the Moriarty's treasured pearl. Even I did not manage to obtain it those years ago. And also dragon blood tyrant ginseng. Even I have only ever eaten one. These are all Niu's. You're not allowed to snatch them." Hunyo warned viciously. Hellion Tianyin saw Hunyo, and his eyes shone involuntarily. He said, "Little girl, have you been betrothed to anyone? What do you think of me? I should be a good match for you." Pum, pum, pum. The consequence of having such a cheap mouth was naturally to be beaten up by Hunyo, whose assault against him wasn't light at all. Hellion Tianyin had to beg Hunyo to stop, which made him feel extremely gloomy. In his previous life, his existence was unparalleled. How was it now that he had already been beaten up by 3 people after just having been reborn? How was it that his dragon's might could not be used again? "Damn brat! Could this little girl be your daughter as well?" he screamed. Otherwise, how could she not be affected by his dragon's might? This could not only work for the dragon race, but also have a powerful suppression on other races, only that it wouldn't be as effective. "Niu belongs to Ling Han," Hunyo said savagely as she stomped her little feet onto Hellion Tianyin, causing him so much pain that he wished for death. Hellion Tianyin felt depressed how come all the good things were taken by Ling Han. His disciple and unmatched genius was the son of Ling Han. Now, this strange little beauty was also Ling Han's little wife. Once the cooking was done, everyone was grabbing at the food. Facing these kinds of ingredients, even heaven-tier cultivators wouldn't dare to eat too much. At most, they would just drink a few spoonfuls of the soup, or else their body would explode. However, Ling Han, Hunyo, Hellion Sun Shui, and Hellion Tianyin all had a humongous appetite, and each one of them ate to their heart's content. However, Hellion Sun Shui was the first to reach satisfaction. It wasn't that her stomach couldn't eat more. Rather, she was unable to take in any more nutritious essence and had to sit on the side to refine it. Ling Han, Hunyo, and Hellion Tianyin were still eating wildly, having no intention to stop. Hellion Tianyin felt even more depressed, saying, "I was nurtured by the true dragon's tooth, my body is tough, and won't explode even with the consumption of more energy. But what is it with the 2 of you that you can actually eat more than I?" He felt that he was reaching his limit. After all, his cultivation was too low now. Useless. Hunyo rolled her eyes at him, indicating that he was too inferior. Hellion Tianyin could only remain silent. After eating a few more mouthfuls of meat, he could only sit at one side and start refining. He was truly a monster. In an instant, he had broken through a few layers and entered the gushing spring tier. Finally, he could compete against Ling Jianshui on the same level. However, as he advanced, raising his level wouldn't be as simple. After all, the higher the cultivation, the more terrifying the amount of energy needed would be, especially in the case of breaking through from the heaven tier to shattering void tier. The amount of energy required was staggering. Yet for him, it was only a matter to be accomplished within 1 or 2 years, or 2 to 3 years at most. As for Ling Han and Hunyo, there was scarcely any obvious progress after the meal. After all, their battle prowess had reached the level of the heaven tier. Thus, it would naturally be more challenging if they wanted to further raise their levels. "Let's go, it's time to leave here." Ling Han snapped his fingers. After packing up the pots, bowls, and chopsticks at once, they walked back in the direction they came from. Su Xiuran and the others should still be at the entrance, Ling Han said. "There is no advantage of terrain for us this time, so we need to fight all out." "Pa, leave it to me." Hellion Tianyin jumped out. He certainly didn't believe that the world was full of abnormal people like Ling Han and Hunyo, who similarly wasn't affected by his dragon's might. Ling Han let out a mischievous laugh and said, "You had better not die so soon after having just been reborn. At least leave a few mystical powers for my son." "You jinx!" Helian Tianyun screamed angrily. Unfortunately, he no longer had the godly valor as he had in the past. Otherwise, he would certainly put this human being in his place for daring to look down on him, the great lord alternative dragon. They came to the entrance, and sure enough, Su Xiuran and his group had already sensed their movement. One by one, they stood in position and blocked the entrance. Helian Tianyun strutted a few steps ahead and snorted. "Juniors, why didn't you kneel immediately after having seen me?" Su Xiuran's group of 4 people already knew that Ling Han possessed a spatial god tool. Naturally, they did not find the additional little brat all that surprising, and completely paid no heed to him. Donglinger said, "Ling Han, hand over the true dragon's tooth and spatial god tool. You should know that you can never make it out of here alive." Helian Tianyun was furious. They were too despicable, was once again disregarded. Also, they wanted the true dragon's tooth? Wasn't he the true dragon tooth? He snorted. One dragon's might was launched, and the mighty attack shot towards the 4 people. Yeah. Su Xiuran's group of 4 all released muffled groans. Under the suppression of dragon's might, they had all turned pale. Even though they were all rulers of martial arts, they still experienced difficulty in breathing under such dragon's might. Su Xiuran immediately recovered using the absolute saber. The absolutely strong saber intent flowed and instantly blocked dragon's might. The son of lightning also wasn't slow, as he brandished the mountains and rivers axe. The emission of light from this treasured tool also blocked the dragon's might. Helian Tianyun could not help but let out a bitter cry. His dragon's might was blocked again. How could he endure this? Fortunately, these 2 juniors did not block the dragon's might with their own abilities, but through the use of 2 spirit tools. Otherwise, he would truly weep. He stared at the 2 spirit tools for a while and muttered to himself, "Those tools are the absolute saber and an imitation of the mountains and rivers axe." Having recognized them, he felt relieved. The first-generation master of the absolute saber was even an elite of the immortal realm, whereas the mountain and river axe originated from and was forged using this realm's power. Even if it was just an imitation, it was reasonable to have some special power capable of matching his dragon's might. Su Xiuran and the Son of Lightning could resist the dragon's might, but Small Sword Emperor and Donglinger couldn't, not even if their hands held the level 10 spirit tools bestowed upon them by their elders. These had absolutely no resistance against dragon's might. After all, this was an alternative dragon, which had once been invincible in this world. Su Xiuran and the Son of Lightning quickly guarded Donglinger and Small Sword Emperor, lest Ling Han took the chance to kill them. As a result, their effective combat power had dropped to 2 in an instant. Although there were still the absolute saber and mountains and rivers axe, the threat had been greatly reduced. Ling Han laughed loudly. Wielding the Revere Life sword, he opened up a path ahead as he rushed forward. Although Su Xiuran and Son of Lightning went all out to kill him, how could they suppress the Revere Life sword in such a short while? Ling Han, who was capable of it, was also hardly fighting zealously. He took the others away with him, leaving Su Xiuran in a limbo, wondering whether to chase them or not. If they were to give chase, then what about Donglinger and Small Sword Emperor if Ling Han and his group managed to catch them off guard? If they didn't chase, then it would be certain that the other party would have obtained the true dragon's tooth. Could it be that they could only watch helplessly as Ling Han and his group walked away? But in the end, they still didn't pursue. After a while, Small Sword Emperor and Donglinger recovered from the aftershock of dragon's might. Both their faces expressed fear. How could this imposing force be so frightening? The situation has progressed beyond our control. Return immediately to the middle state. let's request for ultimate elite assistance to kill Ling Han and seize the true dragon's tooth. The little boy was also extremely formidable, actually being able to release such incomparably terrifying dragon's might. We mustn't spare him, either. Chapter 8:12 The Real Ruler. Chapter 8:12 The Real Ruler. With Hellion Tianyan leading the way, Ling Han and the others didn't wander around randomly. Instead, they tried to collect as much dragon's bloodgrass as possible along the way. It was useless for Hellion Tianyan. He had been nurtured by true dragon's tooth, and the purity of his dragon bloodline was almost at the level of a true dragon. However, for other descendants of the dragon race, this would be good stuff. Even Ling Han wanted to get more of it, given that it would be highly beneficial to his practice of 9 dragons tyrant body art. Even though it was unknown how many years or even millennia had passed, this was, after all, the original body of Hellion Tianyan. Thus, as long as he chose to sense it, he could easily find the dragon's bloodgrass and the true dragon bloodstone. Ling Han had obtained a full harvest on this journey. If one sensed carefully, one would realize that the environment here was deteriorating and on the verge of death. The ghostly dragon cave would no longer expel people. Rather, it was slowly merging with the outside world. Its internal space was collapsing and turning into empty ruins. Henceforth, there would no longer be anything amazing about this place. After 7 days, Ling Han and the others finally walked out of the ghostly dragon cave. Human! They heard a roar just as they reached the outside world. Mo Yuan appeared above them, with his entire body emitting inexhaustible flames of rage, ripping apart the surrounding air. He was a shattering void tier elite. Furthermore, he had battle prowess of 10 stars or even 11 stars. Naturally, he had become extremely formidable now that he was in a fiery rage. A few days ago, he had received news that the most outstanding one among the clan's younger generation, Mo Xingxin, had died by Ling Han's hand. Hence, he had gone berserk the moment he saw Ling Han. Mo Yuan, what do you want to do? Hellion Rong immediately stepped out to stop him. What do I want to do? Mo Yuan gritted his teeth and said, This human killed a member of the Mo clan. I intend to capture him and bring him back to the clan for trial. Humph, that's really funny. After all, is it not normal to be killed in one's attempt to snatch treasures? If everyone was to act like Lord Mo, then wouldn't the entire world be in a mess? Hellion Rong stated coldly. Mo Yuan suppressed his rage and said, But this is a human, and he isn't qualified to enter the ghostly dragon cave. Humph. Didn't you also bring in a few humans yourself? Hellion Rong calmly retorted. How could that be the same? Mo Yuan immediately retorted. Those were the people recommended by the Sea Emperor. Then he's also my son-in-law. Why can't he enter the ghostly dragon cave? Hellion Rong responded evenly. Mo Yuan calmed down and said, It seems that this battle is inevitable? King Hellion, you'd better think carefully. This may provoke a war between the West Sea and the North Sea. Haha, you are still not capable of representing the West Sea. Hellion Rong said coldly, You're seeking death. In the end, Mo Yuan exploded with fury. His entire body's blood and qi was burning, displaying endless power. Having already entered his later years, his blood one was inevitably declining. Although his cultivation remained, his battle prowess was unable to keep up with his cultivation level. At most, it was only 8 stars. Therefore, to fight an opponent like Hellion Rong, he had to sublimate the burning of his blood and qi into power in order to restore the vigor of his earlier years. Lord Mo, you came here to our North Sea, yet still want to act fierce. Xin Yu Tong also stood out and put up a ready-to-fight posture, showing his readiness to fight side by side with Hellion Rong. Hey, this is the grievance between the Mo clan and the Hellion clan. Why should Lord Xin Yu get involved? When Renjia reached out with his hands and blocked Xin Yu Tong, clearly showing, I would not sit by idly. From his point of view, it would be best for Mo Yuan to kill Helion Rong. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so bad if both sides got severely injured from the fight, either. He would then pick up the pieces. He reckoned that Xin Yu Tong also wouldn't be able to stop him. Therefore, he had to let this battle proceed. Taking this opportunity to kill Xin Yu Tong would also be good. Anyway, if either Helion Rong or Xin Yu Tong was to die, then there wouldn't be anyone in the North Sea who could stop his ambition of unification. An old fox like Xin Yu Tong naturally deduced Wenren Jie's motive. But deducing it was one thing, and resolving the matter was another. Mo Yuan was obviously in berserk mode, and was determined to kill Ling Han, so it was not going to be easily resolved. What to do? What to do? Xin Yu Tong had experienced countless storms, but the present situation still caused him to feel quite a headache. If this battle was to happen, then it might once again alter the power division of the North Sea. I command that all of you stop. A childlike voice was heard. However, only Helion Tianyin was seen walking out, his hands held behind his back, authoritatively saying, I shall become the arbitrator. All the grievances shall be settled here. Now, the most important thing is to unite all the forces that can be united in preparation for the day to split open the skies. Phut! This big mouth. How could this matter be announced in public? Helion Rong and Xin Yu Tong were both shocked at the same time. They all knew about the splitting open of the skies, but hearing it from the mouth of a little brat made them feel absurd. They couldn't help but look at Ling Han. You actually let such a little brat know about the secret of splitting the skies. Ling Han shrugged his shoulders. It wasn't him who had said it. Rather, it was that Helion Tianyin had already had such a plan as early as millennia ago. Furthermore, he's actually your ancestor. Ha ha ha. Mo Yuan laughed coldly as he leaped, and his palm grabbed towards Ling Han. He wouldn't kill Ling Han right now, rather. He had to bring him back to the Mo clan to be executed publicly. Hey, did you take my words to mean nothing? Helion Tianyin questioned icily. Wang Dragon's might gushed out. Pa! Mo Yuan immediately dropped from the sky and fell down solidly. So what if he was at the 9th layer of the shattering void tier? So what if his battle prowess was actually 10 stars under the burning of his blood and chi? He was as weak as a baby in the face of suppression by the alternative dragon's power. This was the suppression on the level of life. It was especially effective towards the dragon race. What? Helion Rong, Xin Yu Tong, and Wenren Jie, 3 powerhouses all couldn't help but feel a shiver in their hearts. One had to know that Mo Yuan together with the rest of them made a batch of elites, but he had actually fallen in such a sorry state. Just what was going on? Just now, the dragon's might was only aimed at Mo Yuan. Although the 3 of them were extremely strong, they still caught a trace of the aura, which made them tremble inwardly, giving rise to an instinctive fear. Mo Yuan's prostrated himself on the ground as his entire body broke out in a cold sweat. Forcefully, he raised his head, looked up at Helion Tianyin, and said in a trembling voice, Lord Ancestor Dragon! If it wasn't the Ancestor Dragon, who would have such dragon's might, inexhaustible and powerful, causing him not to be able to put up even the least bit of resistance. Ancestor Dragon. The 3 elites, including Helion Rong, felt that their scalps had become numb. Could it be possible? Helion Tianyin's gaze swept across them as his dragon's might spread out. Pa, pa, pa. The 3 elites, including Helion Rong, involuntarily fell to their knees. Everyone in the vicinity was staring. The 4 of them were at the level of the shattering void tier. To kill a shattering void tier elite was as difficult as touching the skies, let alone making them kneel down. Humiliating life difficulty was at least multiplied by 100 times in comparison. Could it be that this person was indeed Lord Ancestor Dragon? Helion Tianyin couldn't help but feel proud of himself. He had been repeatedly frustrated before, so much so that he had begun doubting himself. Fortunately, there were still many normal people. He snorted and said, "Now will you listen to my words? Whatever your command, please give us your instructions." Helion Rong and the others were prostrated on the ground, all bearing respectful and devout facial expressions. This kind of dragon's might was much too pure and too powerful, exceeding the present-day Sea Emperor by many times more. The real ruler. Chapter 813, Your Ancestor. Chapter 813, Your Ancestor. Since I have returned, then the king of the four seas shall be none other than I. Helion Tianyin boasted shamelessly. Announce this to the whole world. Let whoever of the Ao clan to come immediately to see me and prepare for abdication. If these words were to reach the ears of cultivators in Middle State, they would definitely dismiss them and laugh at him for being a madman. A mere gushing spring-tier cultivator would actually dare to ask the ruler of the four seas to abdicate. Will this be the biggest joke of all? However, the four people, including Helion Rong, did not find this to be funny at all. On the contrary, they considered it just right. He was Lord Ancestor Dragon, whose existence was supreme without equal. Accepting the position of Emperor of the Four Seas would only be a right and inevitable matter. Otherwise, who would dare to put his position above Lord Ancestor Dragon? Wouldn't this be tantamount to a rebellion? Only Ling Han knew that this was the Ancestor Dragon, but didn't know that who knew how many millennia ago he was the dragon race's strongest elite who had reached the height of the alternative dragon. However, this Lord Alternative Dragon was reincarnated using the true dragon tooth, and in terms of bloodline, being called the true dragon wouldn't be an exaggeration. Lord Ancestor Dragon. This human killed a member of the dragon race. I hereby ask for Lord Ancestor Dragon's consent for me to kill him. Mo Yuan still refused to let go of Ling Han. Helion Tianyin glared at him and said, "This human here is the father of my apprentice, which means he is also a brother of mine. Do you want to kill my brother?" With just one glance, his dragon's might permeated the surrounding atmosphere. It was incomparably terrifying. Mo Yuan immediately felt so scared that he prostrated and said, "I dare not. I dare not." An imposing, shattering void tier elite was actually shivering like a lamb. This was something impossible to happen in the world of humans. Having reached the height of the shattering void tier, which one wasn't a genius or a ruler among rulers, how would they ever bow down? However, for the sea race, victory or defeat depended upon the bloodline. The number of elites aided by the bloodline was far more than that of the human race. Yet when it came to a competition of top battle prowess, then no matter how, they could never compare. Disregarding everything else, let's take the example of the 8 kings of the Purple Moon Empire, which, one among them, could Helion Rong or Wenren Jia pose. The sea race did have a great advantage in terms of the number of elites, but when it came to top battle prowess, the human race was indeed stronger. One would know by looking at the 1,000 Corpse sect, which could easily toss out a 15-eyed Corpse King. What did the sea race have? In the eyes of the sea race, a grander bloodline could overwhelm anything. Even though the current strength of Helion Tianyin was low to the point of being pitiful, yet with just the dragon's might, it was sufficient to make them tremble in fear. Wouldn't this explain everything? Helion Rong's face convulsed. While the Lord Ancestor Dragon had accepted his grandson as an apprentice, he naturally wouldn't dare to put his ranking among the generation hierarchy above or even equal to that of the Ancestor Dragon. Then, how should he address the Ancestor Dragon and Ling Han? Such a mess. It was all such a mess. Get lost! Helion Tianyin shouted, his little face filled with pride. Before, he had to nurse his grievance for so long. Now that he could finally hold his head high for once, it made him feel so great. Mo Yuan quickly ran away in fright, not even daring to let out a fart. Both Wenren Jie and Xin Yutong also dared not speak any more nonsense, and thus took their leave one after another, bringing their clan members with them. Ling Han had actually become a brother of the Lord Ancestor Dragon. Who would dare to pick on him anymore? Xinyu Tong felt extremely regretful for not pairing Ling Han together with Xinyu Kai previously. Had he done so, he would now have built a relationship with Lord Ancestor Dragon. Really regretful. Xinyu Kai also gazed at Ling Han oddly. The recent mission to Ghostly Dragon Cave had already changed her impression of Ling Han. She even had a good impression of him after being rescued by the other party. However, she would never have thought that just when Ling Han reappeared, he had become the brother of Lord Ancestor Dragon. There was no knowing how many beautiful women of the sea race would want to marry Ling Han. Even for her, as a precious jewel among them, it could be said that he was now beyond her reach, and she wasn't even qualified to act aloof in his front. She sighed. Inwardly, this man had never belonged to her, so she'd better forget him in the future. She left with Xinyu Tong, but unexpectedly couldn't hold in her tears as they flowed from her eyes. "Hey, why haven't you gotten lost yet?" Hellion Tianyan looked at Hellion Rong, puzzled. He had actually disobeyed his orders. Of course, it wasn't that Hellion Rong dared to disobey, but was instead detained by Ling Han and wasn't able to leave. Before, he would have immediately pushed Ling Han aside, and that would have been sufficient. If one from the Shattering Void tier intended to leave, how would a mere deity transformation tier cultivator be able to stop him? But how could he dare to make a move against Ling Han now? He was actually the brother of Lord Ancestor Dragon. If he was to make a move, he would be committing an act of mutiny. Anyone of the sea race could act against him. This would be treason. For the sea race, the most highly regarded matter would be one's bloodline. The Ao clan was the best example. Whoever disrespected them would become an enemy of the entire sea race. Seeing that the Lord Ancestor Dragon had flipped out, Hellion Rong quickly cast a glance at Ling Han, meaning, "Since it was you that stopped me, of course, now you must explain your actions." Ling Han coughed once and said, "Allow me to introduce to you. This is my father-in-law, your apprentice's grandfather. Furthermore, his surname is also Hellion. He is named Hellion Rong." "Pooh!" Hellion Tianyan immediately spewed out a sip of water, which directly splattered onto the face of Hellion Rong. Poor Hellion Rong, not only did he dare not become angry, he did not even dare to wipe it off and still had to maintain a smile. "What? His surname is also Hellion." Hellion Tianyan felt a sense of dissatisfaction. He immediately pointed a finger at Hellion Sin Shui and asked, "What about her? Is she also from the Hellion clan?" "Wrong, she is my wife. Since she is married to me, that means she's part of the Ling clan." Ling Han laughed mischievously. Hellion Tianyan suddenly thundered, "Damn brat, you dare to hide this from me!" Ling Jian Shui was clearly a descendant from his bloodline. There was no need for him to be accepted as an apprentice, was an offspring of his clan's younger generation. Now that he had accepted this apprentice, his and Ling Han's ranking within the clan's generation hierarchy would be considered equal. This was a huge loss for him. Originally, Ling Han would have to take care to address him as ancestor. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Who asked him to notice that the bloodline of Ling Jian Shui was incomparably pure, which made him hot-headed? Hu Niu was upset and directly knocked him on the head, saying, "Why, you're also the same generation as Niu. Don't you know how great Niu is?" Hellion Tianyan was struck until he staggered backward, but dared not show any temper in front of Hu Niu. He weakly mumbled, "But I am their ancestor after all." "What ancestors? Do you believe Niu could smash you to bits?" Hu Niu unleashed an extremely fierce aura. Hellion Tianyan suddenly became like a little punching bag and dared not utter a single sound. This little girl was unaware of the severity of her moves and would act arbitrarily. He would rather offend Ling Han than this little demon. Hellion Rong's forehead was covered with cold sweat as he watched. A mere human would actually thrash Lord Ancestor Dragon. This was disgraceful indeed. Poor Lord Ancestor Dragon even had to endure it. Would he dare to oppose? Did he think that he was more powerful than the Lord Ancestor Dragon? Ling Han burst into laughter, saying, "Father-in-law, he is the strongest elite of the sea race in the early days, previously known as Lord Alternative Dragon of the Ghostly Dragon Cave, and also the ancestor of the Hellion clan. He is named Hellion Tianyan." Fuck! Hellion Rong's expression immediately became extremely interesting. He would never have anticipated that the one whom he had regarded as Lord Ancestor Dragon was actually the forefather of the Hellion clan. Furthermore, he was once the strongest elite of the sea race. At that time, he had almost become a true dragon. This was also due to a gap in history. The existence of Ghostly Dragon Cave allowed the sea race to know that there had once been such an elite within their ranks. However, any information regarding him was a complete blank. This time, their generation hierarchy would definitely be in a mess. In the midst of his dizziness, this was what Hellion Rong thought. Chapter 814, Back to the Imperial Capital. Chapter 814, Back to the Imperial Capital. Everyone had been shocked, but they still left the island and headed towards Dome Cloud Island. They spent 5 days on the road, and when they had arrived, Hellion Tianyan had once again broken through another tier to become a being of the spiritual ocean tier. This kind of cultivation wouldn't hold any significance in the eyes of the elites, yet having completed a breakthrough within just a mere 5 days was an extremely amazing feat. It was reckoned that he would be able to cross the boundary to reach the spiritual pedestal tier in another 10 days, a month to reach the flower blossom tier, 2 months to reach the spiritual infant tier, for months to reach the deity transformation tier. A year later, he would even reach the heaven tier and begin charging towards shattering the void. He was originally the strongest cultivator of his generation. Now his foundations couldn't be stronger, and it wouldn't be surprising for him to return to the peak of cultivation within the shortest time. Of course, all kinds of cultivation resources also had to keep up with his advancement. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a matter of 1 year, but rather 10 years or even 100 years. Upon Hellion Tianyun's strong suggestion and request, slightly short of whining and pleading, Ling Han finally agreed to leave his son with the sea race. The true dragon's bloodline of Ling Jianshui was incomparably pure. If he were to receive guidance from Hellion Tianyan from childhood, he would be able to have the best growth. Although Hellion Sen Shui was reluctant to part with her son, she could only let go for the sake of her son's future. After all, the great Ling Empire couldn't do without her governance. She wouldn't feel at ease if she were to hand it over to Ling Han. Everything was for the sake of her son. She could never have thought that, upon splitting of the skies, Ling Jianshui would precisely be a young master in the immortal realm. Ling Han left the biggest true dragon bloodstone behind. According to Hellion Tianyan, Ling Jianshui's bloodline was already pure enough, and thus the dragon's bloodgrass would not be very helpful to him. Only the true dragon bloodstone would still be of some use. Hence, Ling Han also left behind a lot of other treasures from the Black Tower. Hellion Tianyan would prepare body-strengthening medicine for Ling Jianshui to ensure that he would be getting the best growth conditions possible. Ling Han naturally felt reassured. Since Hellion Tianyan was the forefather of the Hellion clan, how could he not have his son's best interests at heart? He and Hellion Sen Shui decided to come back 1 year later. When that time came, the medicine that had been left behind would nearly be exhausted. It would then be timely to replenish them. Hellion Rong was rushing to send the 2 out of Dome Cloud Island as if they were bad luck. He couldn't wait to brainwash Ling Jianshui was your grandfather, the person who loved you most in the world, even more so than your parents. After successful brainwashing, wouldn't Ling Jianshui become a member of the Hellion clan? How could Ling Han be unaware of his father-in-law's thinking? He laughed inwardly when his son reached the age of 5. he would definitely bring him back. No matter how close he was to his grandfather, could it compare to the bond with his own parents? While both of them were harboring their respective intentions in their minds, they laughed heartily before turning around and parting ways. Both yours and my father's laughter are so fake, Helian's son, Shue, pointed out. Want to snatch my son from me? So what if he's my father-in-law? Ling Han said, smiling, Hurry, let's go back. Having left for so long, we don't know if there's any chaos in the government. Helian's son, Shue, rolled her eyes, saying, There won't be any problems, even if you don't go back for 100 years. If I don't go back, then there'll be chaos. Ling Han self-consciously said, If you say so, I'll feel very guilty. It could be said that this trip had brought them an unexpected outcome. With Helian Tianyan overseeing the affairs, the unification of the North Sea was definitely a matter nailed down. However, it was believed that the Ao clan wouldn't relinquish the power that easily, and would certainly question Helian Tianyan's identity as ancestor dragon, as well as engage the power of the Four Seas to take punitive action. Unfortunately, Sea Race was a place which held one's bloodline in the highest regard. Helian Tianyan's bloodline was indeed so pure that it could reach the condition of being a true dragon. It was no exaggeration to refer to him as Lord Ancestor Dragon. Consequently, the day of unification of the Four Seas would be imminent. This matter was much easier to deal with as compared to the 5 great sects in the Middle State. Originally, he was worried that the Sea Race and the Middle State's 5 great sects would join forces, which would give rise to an unexpected variable. Yet, now it would be the turn of the Middle State's 5 great sects to have a headache. The Sea Race wasn't lacking in shattering void tier elites. In addition to being under Helian Tianyan's governance, every one of them would be loyal. This was a force that could be completely converged together. Ling Han felt for the first time that there was substantial progress in the movement to split open the skies. The next step would be to eliminate the 5 great sects and the 1,000 corpse sect, Ling Han said to himself inwardly. As long as these 2 forces were straightened out, then the day would come soon for the whole world to attain peace. A few days later, they returned to the desolate north. The ancient mine of Fire Country had now become a place of hell in the midst of the rising black fog. One by one, howling humanoid figures would come into being as if they were evil spirits. It was said in the middle of every night, the sound of howling spirits could be heard clearly even from the side of the former capital, which had already caused many people to move away from the imperial capital. It was really creepy. Among the people who had stayed, many often fell sick, causing more and more people choosing to relocate. Ling Han frowned deeply. This was an anomaly. Buried below were at least 100 shattering void tier cultivators, who had cultivated the netherworld cultivation technique. This meant the reliance on the underground's Yin Qi to turn the body of a living person into a Yin corpse. The most important thing was that no one knew how powerful these people were. If they were at the same level as the Sea Race, then they could be dealt with by just dispatching the Sea Race. However, if they were all like the Lunar King, then it would be an incomparably formidable force. I can't be bothered too much with it. It would be useless to think about it anyway. I just need to raise the level of my strength. It doesn't matter who they are. I would suppress all of them. They returned to the imperial capital. At this time, a large number of reports had been sent from the front line. Having opened and looked at them, they were all good news. The West region had been basically unified, and it had come under the banner of the Great Ling Empire. The next step would be to consider the issue of attacking either the East region or the South region. For the Great Ling Empire nowadays, this wasn't a problem. Ling Han could clearly feel that the power of the nation had gotten a lot stronger. Firstly, it was due to the territorial expansion and the increase in population. Secondly, it was because the image of the Great Ling Empire had also penetrated the hearts of the people and won the recognition of the general public. With the people's hearts being united, the nation's fortune would naturally become stronger. He began to refine the true dragon bloodstone, cultivating the blood through his heart. Although the largest bloodstone remained in the North Sea, they had obtained several more in the ghostly dragon cave laterite was quite an abundant harvest. Condensing the essence of dragon blood would be helpful for everyone, but the amount would be limited. Only by means of Ling Han's and Hellion Sun Shue's refining it into their bodies could such treasures yield the most perfect effect. The dragon blood essence left by the Shattering Void tier elite with 20 stars was really awesome. The level of Ling Han's 9 Dragons Tyrant Body art was raised at an extremely fast speed. Just 10 days later, Ling Han discovered that his brute force had reached the limit of the deity transformation tier. Next, he could first rush the level of the body art to the heaven tier, which would also bring about a qualitative change of the indestructible heaven scroll and raise his body to that of level 10 precious metal. This way, there would only be very few people in this world who could hurt him. He made a firm resolution to rush the level of his body art towards the heaven tier as soon as possible. Furthermore, there had been another major gain from this expedition to the sea race's territory. It was that he had acquired a level 10 cultivation technique, which could allow his origin power to reach the peak of the heaven tier. After switching to cultivating this technique, he could charge with it towards the Shattering Void tier. This technique was naturally acquired from his father-in-law, giving face to Hellion Sun Shui and Ling Jian Shui. In addition to that, with Hellion Tianyun's position as ancestor dragon, how could Hellion wrong refuse? Ling Han had concocted a lot of alchemical pills targeting his own condition, allowing him to better self-regulate and improve the level of his body arts. After another month, he finally advanced his body arts to the peak level of the heaven tier. At this time, the elites of the Middle States, 5 great sects, once again initiated an attack. Chapter 815, Assault of the Elites. Chapter 815, Assault of the Elites. The assault of the 5 clans of the Middle State was something Ling Han had expected would happen, so he was naturally not surprised. On the other hand, that it had taken so long for someone from the 5 sects to come was actually slightly out of Ling Han's expectations. This was most likely because they had been facing too much pressure from the Purple Moon Empire and could only now draw out a portion of their people from the 5 sections. He was a little expectant who would be coming. Ling Han walked out of the Imperial Palace and saw a battleship hovering in the skies above the Imperial Palace. There was a raised flag on which was drawn a creature that could either be an earthworm or a long serpent on it. The Earth Dragon sect. True, he had killed Jiaming, so it was logical that the Earth Dragon sect would send an elite to kill him in vengeance. Such a minor character would actually dare to establish his own nation and empire. What nonsense! An ice-cold voice was heard from the skies. This voice was a little familiar. The Beast Snake King. Ling Han immediately remembered him. Previously, when the 15-eyed Corpse King appeared, a total of 3 Shattering Void tier elites had arrived from the 5 great sects, and the elite from the Earth Dragon sect was precisely this Beast Snake King. He bite me? Ling Han laughed. Lord Beast Snake King, could you allow me to first battle with this person? Su Xiaoran's voice was heard from aboard the battleship. All right, this person could be considered your internal demon. As long as you eliminate this man, you would be able to break through to the Shattering Void tier in the shortest amount of time. Furthermore, with your talent, as well as the full support and nurturing of your sect, it would not be difficult for you to rush up to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier in 10+ years, with much awaited battle prowess. Although Su Xiaoran was not the strongest genius in the history of the Absolute Saber sect, he was the only one who had been recognized by the Absolute Saber. Precisely because of this, even the Beast Snake King expected much from him, or in other words, attached much importance to him. After all, that old elder of the Absolute Saber sect was still alive. Thank you, my lord. Su Xiaoran leaped down from the battleship and stood on empty air in the skies. He declared, Ling Han, Neither of us will use external aids. Let us have a good battle to our heart's content." Ling Han shook his head and replied, "You are a little bit shameless. You obviously have the cultivation level of the peak of the heaven tier, yet proclaim your desire to have a good battle with me. I really don't know what's wrong with your head." He smiled faintly and answered, "However, if I don't battle with you, you would think I'm actually scared of you." Xiao, he leaped on empty air and stood on the same level with Su Xiaoran. He said, "Come, I am the ruler of the great Ling Empire. A bunch of clowns, see how I shall suppress you." Su Xiaoran humphed coldly and said, "What ruler of the great Ling Empire? You are merely a false ruler. Today, I shall kill you with my saber. So where would there still be any great Ling Empire?" Ling Han picked at his ear and asked, "How many times have you said you would kill me? I'm already bored of listening to it. So could you try saying something new? Then just die." Su Xiaoran flew over, wielding the absolute saber in a slash in Ling Han's direction. There was not much technique in this move. It could be described in one word, and that was fast. Xiao, the saber seemed to have just been raised, yet had already slashed down right in front of Ling Han. Saber ray shone blindingly as if it were the beginning of the world. This Su Xiaoran could really not be underestimated. Mere weeks had passed, and his abilities once again improved astonishingly. It was not in cultivation, but battle prowess. His comprehension of the path of the saber had increased greatly once again. Wang, the Revere Life sword in Ling Han's hand, was trembling as if it was about to fly out of his grip. "Saber heart." Ling Han smiled faintly. Sword heart unfolded, and the Revere Life sword immediately steadied. He raised his sword to parry, clang, and just managed to block the blade of the saber that Su Xiaoran had slashed at him with. If it had been any other cultivator in the deity transformation tier, or even in the heaven tier, they would have been likely beheaded by this strike without seeing more than a blur, for it was so fast that there was no possible way to block it. Even if the eyes could catch sight of the movement of the saber, if one moved too slowly, they would still be unable to block it and could only use their origin power to take a head-on. But Ling Han was a body cultivator and had furthermore improved his physique to the level of the heaven tier. It was naturally extremely easy for him to block this strike. The sword and saber clashed, the friction giving rise to endless luster as blinding as the sun. Ling Han gave a strong shove. Pum! Su Xiaoran was sent flying by the force. He smiled and said, "This strike is indeed very fast, but the power does not seem to be enough." Of course, power and speed could not be simultaneously achieved. His strike was extremely fast, so its power was naturally lacking. This was also due to the fact that Su Xiaoran knew that Ling Han had a strange motion technique and had deliberately practiced fast strikes. He had not thought that Ling Han was so atypical that he'd block it forcefully without even dodging or ducking. With a flip of his body, he steadied his balance. He raised the absolute saber levelly, his eyes cold. Endless saber intent circulated inside his body, solidified and gushed out, forming thousands of sabers around him. There were all types and shapes, and they had all been formed from saber intent. This would not damage the physical body, but was capable of striking at one's very soul, which was very terrifying. Sword Heart, once mastered, could cut the soul, and Saber Heart, once mastered, could do it as well. "Then take another strike from me," Su Xiaoran declared coldly. His expression turned serious, and the absolute saber moved slightly, forming multiple ripples. Cracking wind slash. Ling Han dared not be careless. The power of this slash was indeed frightening. He raised the Revere Life sword to chest level, and the sword intent of the mysterious 3,000 circulated as a similarly tremendously powerful aura spread out. Aboard the battleship, the Beast Snake King could not help but let out a light exclamation of surprise. Being the strong existence that he was, he naturally immediately realized that Ling Han's sword intent gave him a feeling of familiarity. This is the 3 techniques of black origin. This was one of the ultimate techniques of the Heaven's Sword sect. He was definitely not unfamiliar with it. Su Xiao Ran gave a soft shout and brandished the absolute saber in an attack. Instantly, the world around them paled, and only pure darkness was left behind. There was merely the endless brightness that was being exuded from the absolute saber, and it surged towards Ling Han. Even if Ling Han opened his eyes, he would not be able to spot Su Xiao Ran. The only thing left was that brilliant saber that was slashing down in his direction. No sight of the wielder, merely the saber. Ling Han remained unafraid. He simply closed his eyes and merely used his heart to see. Sword heart. A smile lifted up the corners of his lips. His long sword waved, delivering 3,100 brilliant sword flashes. Each strike was severe, and they shot towards Su Xiaoran. In theory, 10,000 techniques returned to one was the strongest individual killing move, whereas the mysterious 3,000 was to be used in group attacks. Because the power of the attack was divided, its destructive power was naturally not on the same level as 10,000 techniques returned to one. Yet Ling Han was too strong now, and added with the advantage the Revere Life sword gave him. The power of even a single strike was enough to become a huge threat to Su Xiaoran. Thus, using the mysterious 3,000 was naturally even more effective as the range of attack could be widened. Immediately upon contact, both sides were using their ultimate moves. Sword flash and saber flash clashed, creating a massive explosion in the skies. Temporarily, everyone had lost their sight and hearing. Everything completely white in front of their eyes, and merely a soft humming was left in their ears. When the light subsided, Su Xiaoran had already retreated 300 meters away. There was a total of 5 wounds on his body that blood was seeping out of, and no matter what he tried, the blood's flow would not cease. In case of a wound that had been inflicted by the Revere Life sword, how could the bleeding be stopped so easily? There were also 3 spots on Ling Han where his clothes had been torn open, but he was still mild and humid like jade, and it could not be seen that he was wounded anywhere after his cultivation of his body art had entered the heaven tier. His physique had also once again improved to another level, and had reached the extent of level 10 precious metal. In the hands of a shattering void tier elite, the absolute saber should be able to leave a mark on level 10 precious metal as well. But if it was Su Xiaoran, it was obviously impossible. Just a bit of a gap could mean a world of difference. Chapter 816, suppressed. Chapter 816, suppressed. Su Xiaoran's expression took a drastic change. His battle prowess was not the slightest bit inferior to Ling Han's, yet his physique was far from being on the same level. In a battle wherein both sides were about equal in power, this difference was absolutely fatal. He took a deep breath, his expression becoming somber. His fighting spirit blazed. If he could still defeat Ling Han in a disadvantageous position, the boost to his confidence would be indescribable. He might even be able to take that final step and become an elite of the Shattering Void tier. Currently, he could only claim to be a young genius possessing great potential. Yet without achieving the Shattering Void tier cultivation, he was still a minor character at the end of the day. In this great era, only the Shattering Void tier would translate to influence and have a decisive effect on the situation. Thus, he needed to battle and improve his battle prowess to the utmost. After winning, his mental state would be improved to another level, and his saber heart would enter mastery level. His cultivation would break through to the Shattering Void tier, and he would ascend to the peak of humanity. "We battle," he declared grandly, his full head of black locks dancing behind him, his eyes bright. "As you wish." Ling Han's battle spirit blazed as well. Su Xiaoran had formed Saber Heart. Furthermore, he had reached the level of major accomplishment, so he was precisely the best opponent he could have. fighting a battle with the latter, Ling Han, too, would be able to enrich his own sword heart. Fight, fight, fight. The two fighters engaged in a ferocious battle. Sword and saber clashed, the collision creating ripples of power that spread out to their surroundings time and again. The absolute saber and revere life sword endlessly clashed. Both were not only level 10 spirit tools, but also in the upper tier amongst such. Even in the hands of these people, they managed to release a terrifying might. The beast snake king nodded continuously and could not help but admit that these two were super geniuses, which made a feeling of treasuring talent arise in him. Unfortunately, one of them was definitely going to die here today. It was not that the Earth Dragon sect did not have such a genius had died in Ling Han's hands. This was also the main reason why he was personally here. Otherwise, with the tense situation in the war with the Purple Moon Empire, how could an ultimate elite be so easily dispatched here? Odd. How could this brat possibly learn the ultimate technique of the Heaven Sword sect? The Beast Snake King was internally confused. The 3 techniques of Black Origin were no ordinary techniques, but one of the core secret techniques of the Heaven's Sword sect. Even among the true disciples, there were not many that could learn this technique. So what allowed an outsider to learn this technique? However, this was fine. In the end, immortals would descend from the immortal realm and refine all life of this realm into the realm pill. Even if everyone learnt the 3 techniques of Black Origin, so what? Ling Han's right hand wielded his sword, and he had his left palm facing outwards. He endlessly shot strikes with the earth, overturning seal golden light, flickered, and the destructive power was incomparably frightening. With the upgrade of the Thunderclap 9th Heaven, his speed was slightly faster than Su Xiu Ran's, forcing the latter into taking his attacks head-on. This Su Xiu Ran was naturally seriously wounded. Ling Han was a cultivator of body arts and had terrifying brute power. In a battle at close quarters, for every blow Su Xiu Ran delivered, he could at least return 10. How colossal was this difference? Furthermore, his physique had reached the level of the Shattering Void tier, so even if the Beast Snake King moved, he would have to spend a great amount of effort to refine him to death. What more when it was Su Xiu Ran? Take note, it was not beat to death, but to refine to death. With physique on the level of level 10 precious metal, who would be able to kill him straight off? They could only use secret techniques to eliminate Ling Han's life force, or have someone with a fully mastered sword heart cut Ling Han's soul. Slicing open his physical body could only be mere thought. From this aspect, Su Xiu Ran was already not on the same level as Ling Han. Ling Han was using his opponent to polish his sword heart. In his eyes, this was the only value of Su Xiu Ran's life. Su Xiu Ran had used all the ultimate techniques in his repertoire. He was indeed very strong, very, very strong, and was definitely one of the strongest elites beneath the level of the Shattering Void tier. However, his opponent was too much of a monster, who, by nature, was already standing in an invincible position. No matter how hard he tried, it was all empty effort, and he could only harvest the bitter fruit of failure. When Ling Han became more and more familiar with using the sword heart, Su Xiu Ran began falling into a disadvantage. Then it became more and more obvious, until he was inhibited. Among every 10 of his moves, 9 were defensive. Su Xiu Ran's expression turned ugly. He had already improved his battle prowess to the maximum, but still could not match Ling Han. More importantly, the latter was still in the deity transformation tier, though his body art was terrifying and had already reached the heaven tier. Body art had always been used as something supplementary. What was more important was cultivation. Even if he had the advantage of a whole and a half cultivation tier over Ling Han, he had still been beaten to the point that he practically could not fight back, which made him feel extremely depressed. He could not defeat Ling Han, even if the Beast Snake King killed Ling Han later. So what? A sore point would be left behind in his heart, and this would naturally become a massive shortcoming when he attempted to break through to the shattering void tear, and it would practically be impossible for him to survive the fateful calamity. Enough! The beast snake king voiced out. Initially, he had planned to let Su Xiao Ran defeat Ling Han before he made his move, so that the former would have the opportunity to break through. Yet the end result was that he had helped Ling Han succeed. He could naturally sense that Ling Han's sword heart was improving. "I have not lost," Su Xiao Ran called out harshly. He was definitely not going to accept defeat. In the few battles he had with Ling Han, he was actually slightly superior. If it was not because he desired to kill Ling Han too much, he would not even need to awaken the absolute saber. The result was that he failed every time and could only watch as Ling Han became stronger and stronger. Humph! The Beast Snake King moved directly, grabbing onto Su Xiaoran. After sealing his cultivation, he tossed him on board the battleship. He looked at Ling Han coldly and commanded, "Kill yourself!" "Old Beast Snake, where does your confidence come from?" Ling Han asked loftily. The Beast Snake King smirked coldly and said, "You merely have a formation technique, but that is only worth 8 stars of shattering void tear at most. Do you know what my battle prowess is worth?" "I don't, but it hasn't reached 15 stars in any case," Ling Han replied without the slightest reservations and with complete honesty. "You *** King actually dare to say it." The Beast Snake King could not help but feel gloomy. His battle prowess naturally could not possibly have reached 15 stars. If not, why would he have been afraid of that 15-eyed Corpse King? This brat really was stubborn. He could not help but move. His right hand stretched out, and his arm, like a serpent, was twisting and turning, heading to grab in Ling Han's direction. Ling Han was not the slightest bit afraid, and brandished his sword to take this blow head-on. The Beast Snake King was enraged. A mere junior in the deity transformation tier. Although his body arts cultivation had reached the heaven tier, it was still who knew how many years away from being able to take on the attack of a shattering void tier elite. This was practically an insult to him. Who would be able to humiliate a shattering void tier elite? Kill! The Beast Snake King's palm lowered, forming into a mountain, and pressed down on Ling Han. He wanted to smack Ling Han into mush with one blow. Without a doubt, Ling Han was pressed down from the skies by this smack. With the strike of a colossal, sky-overshadowing palm, he dropped outside the city. Hong long long, the earth was trembling, and the city walls were shaking as if an earthquake had occurred. Was he dead? Su Xiaoran did not know what he was feeling. How could this great foe of his be so foolish to actually dare to have an open confrontation with a shattering, void-tier ultimate elite? Furthermore, it was an experienced veteran shattering void-tier elite, like the Beast Snake King. No matter how he looked at it, this did not seem like Ling Han's style. Meanwhile, the Beast Snake King raised his hand. That palm of origin power that was several hundreds of meters long on the ground had disappeared. A disdainful expression appeared on his face, but he immediately stiffened soon after. That was because, on the ground, Ling Han swept away the dirt from his clothes and got back to his feet. As he did so, he stretched out his arms and kicked out his feet a few times as if he had merely tripped carelessly. Chapter 817, Yi Shuang Shuang Moves. Chapter 817, Yi Shuang Shuang Moves. A palm strike from a shattering void tier elite was only equivalent to Ling Han stumbling. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Did this guy have the life of a cockroach and could not be killed? A shattering void tier elite moved, and he was actually unscathed. Oh, there was indeed some dust on him, but that was all. Setting aside Ling Han, even if it was another shattering void tier elite, he would be severely wounded or even instantly killed with such a blow. No, this had to be a lie. Su Xiaoran's eyes were popping out in shock, his mouth gaping widely. He even had his tongue hanging out in astonishment. Don't blame him for losing his composure. He knew very well how astronomically difficult it was to cultivate body arts to the extent of level 10 precious metal precisely because he was a prodigy. The sea race was powerful, right? All of them had a bloodline, especially the royal clans. With their true dragon bloodline, not only were their chances of breaking through to the shattering void tier greatly increased, they were all cultivators of body arts at the same time and possessed tough physiques. In a battle between opponents of equal cultivation level, they could absolutely claim the upper hand. But there were very, very, very few rulers of the sea race that could reach the extent of level 10 precious metal in terms of their physique. Breaching this gap was much too difficult. Not only did one need to be of the true dragon bloodline, the purity level also had to be extremely high. For example, the Four Seas ruling clan, the AO clan, had 2 to 3 people who had managed to cultivate their physique to this level. Additionally, that alternative dragon of the ghostly dragon cave was also a unique case. His ancestral bloodline was very pure, and he had managed to reach this level before. Why couldn't that alternative dragon be killed even when immortals descended to the lower realm? Simple. That was because his physique had reached the toughness of level 10 precious metal. It was too difficult to kill him. The owner of such a physique could only be slowly refined after being subdued. However, that alternative dragon had had a battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tear, so how could he allow anyone to slowly refine him to death? Ling Han was currently only in the deity transformation tier, yet his physique had reached the level of level 10 precious metal. How could one not lose composure in the face of this reality? Su Xiao ran sighed internally. His defeat in Ling Han's hands wasn't the least bit undeserved. If he could actually slash through the ladder, then level 10 precious metal would really be too cheap, wouldn't it? The Beast Snake King had lived for so many years, and was one of the strongest elites of the current era. Thus, he naturally was the type not to even blink if the sky collapsed. He looked coldly at Ling Han and said, "I have really never imagined that your physique has actually reached this level. Old Beast Snake, do you still want to kill me?" After Ling Han had swept himself clean of the dust on his body, he once again soared to stand in mid-air. In truth, the toughness of one's physique was only a characteristic trait of the indestructible heavens. Scrollit's stronger trait was its recovery abilities. Even if someone with the body of diamond lost a limb, he would be able to regrow it automatically, but had absolutely no need to circulate the indestructible heavens scroll for that. How frightening was that? Naturally, he was not about to tell this to his opponent. The Beast Snake King sneered and said, "You merely have a slightly tougher physique. It is fine even if I temporarily cannot wound you. I merely have to capture and bring you back to be slowly refined. 1 year, 10 years. I will manage to refine you completely eventually. The things I lack the least is patience and time. Can you capture me?" Ling Han pointed with a finger. Instantly, the Beast Snake King felt displeased. What level of existence was he, and when had he ever seen anyone point at him like so? He was immediately going to make his move, but his hand had just raised when he abruptly stiffened and called out, "Your Honor, please reveal yourself to see me." "What if I don't want to see you?" Yi Shuang Shuang's laid-back voice was heard. "Then please do not interfere, Your Honor. This is the will of the 5 great sects." The Beast Snake King humphed. "Little earthworms, who knows how many I have trampled to death previously? You actually dare to be insolent in front of me?" Yi Shuang Shuang said haughtily. She still did not appear. "I do not want to become enemies with that big earthworm, either. Just get lost so that I will not be called a bully in the future." "Your Honor, your boasting is a bit too exaggerated," the Beast Snake King countered with a sneer. He was one of the strongest elites of the current era, with battle prowess reaching 12 stars of shattering void tier. Those that could match him in this world were really numbered. There was no need to mention those monsters of the Purple Moon Empire. All of them knew 4 to 5 mystical powers and could make use of power of the nation too, so their battle prowess exceeded even 15 stars. Are you getting lost or not? Yi Shuang rebuked directly. The Beast Snake King took a deep breath. It was obvious that she was a shattering void tier elite. There was no need to doubt this. However, how much battle prowess did she possess? At this time, the war with the Purple Moon Empire was very difficult. If they had another enemy of the shattering void tier, that would be an additional burden. It was best not to add another enemy to their enemies, ranks unless he had confidence to kill her here. However, they were both in the shattering void tier, so if one of them wanted to flee, there was still a high chance of accomplishing this. In the worst-case scenario, they could ignite their life source, and they could manage to explode with enough speed that not even descended immortals could manage to catch up to them. All right, I will only take this junior with me, he called out, pointing at Ling Han. No way. Yi Shuang refused decisively. Your Honor, you are too tyrannical, the Beast Snake King countered coldly. Did she really think he was afraid of her? Yi Shuang broke out into laughter and said, I have always been tyrannical. You don't like it? If you're capable of it, then come and fight me. See how I shall deal with you. The Beast Snake King trembled in rage. This woman was really too much of a ruffian. He paid her no more attention, and instead stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han. Since he could not smack this monster to death, he would capture him and bring him back to be suppressed. With such physique, he could completely be treated as a human-shaped alchemical pill. Once refined, he would definitely be very nutritious. How dare you? A slender hand smacked out. It enlarged endlessly, blocking the large hand that the Beast Snake King had stretched out. Pung! The two palms collided and instantly formed a visible ripple that surged out in all directions in midair. Wang. Immediately, a semicircular light shield appeared over the imperial capital below them. The force of this shock wave caused it to tremble and look like it was about to be destroyed. Pa! There were a few places that had cracked. The shock wave instantly caused tremendous damage. Thankfully, because this light shield was there, the imperial capital was only shaken. Otherwise, it would definitely have been completely leveled. Shattering Void Tier was too powerful. In midair, a light shield also appeared over that battleship. The ship swayed and shook as if it was floating on water and had been affected by waves. Yi Shuang, don't fight him here. My imperial capital will be destroyed. Ling Han called out. That defensive light shield was actually formed by that image of the black tower above the imperial capital. This was the amazing use of power of the nation. If he could solidly unify the whole North region, the defenses formed would probably be so strong that not even the Beast Snake King would be able to breach them. Yi Shuang's figure flashed out and was already standing in midair. She flipped her hair in displeasure and said, Brat, you've gotten brave, haven't you? You actually dare to order me around? Milady, please suppress this old snake. Is that better? Ling Han asked, smiling. Though it's not really all that earnest, I have a very helpful personality. There's nothing for it, so I'll just help you this once. Yi Shuang turned to look at the Beast Snake King and showed off a gorgeous smile. Little worm, if you don't leave, you really won't have any more chances to. Who are you, Your Honor? The Beast Snake King looked at Yi Shuang with utmost seriousness. He actually could not identify the level of her cultivation. This meant that her cultivation level was not beneath his. It was definitely impossible for her to exceed him in cultivation level, though. In this realm, the maximum was the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier unless it was a descended immortal. Chapter 8:18 Forced to Retreat. Chapter 8:18 Forced to Retreat. Me. Yi Shuang giggled. I am naturally the #1 beauty of this world. Nonsense, that's Niu. Hu Niu mumbled from below. However, at this moment, no one would pay attention to what she was saying. The beast snake king stared fixedly at Yi Shuang as if he could distinguish something just from looking at her. After quite a while, he finally said, "I will definitely take away this man with me today. Then you'll have to prepare, for you will be leaving your life here," Yi Shuang said casually. Even when facing a being like the beast snake king, she was still very casual. But the calmer she was, the more the beast snake king dared not be careless. In the past, he would definitely be very confident, but with the appearance of the Purple Moon Empire, he finally knew what the words in the wider world, "there would always be people more talented," meant. Merely the 8 kings were enough to thrash them fully. This woman, could she also be some old monster from some era long past? Yi Shuang could not help but raise a brow and asked, "Are you guessing internally that I am an old monster from some past era?" "Fuck, you fuck really are a monster, ah," the beast snake king exclaimed inside his heart. A slight change of expression appeared on his face unconsciously. "You actually dare to call me an old monster. You damn earthworm. You're really asking to be beaten." Yi Shuang was infuriated and immediately shot towards the beast snake king. The beast snake king dared not be careless and quickly became serious, stepping up to receive her. Pung, pung, pung. As the two battled, they continued to soar up into the skies. Thus, though the shock waves from the battle were still gushing out wildly, they managed to miss the area the imperial capital was in. Ling Han nodded quietly. It looked like Yi Shuang did not just know how to fool around. He leaped up and watched the battle from a nearby location. In this world, aside from others at the Shattering Void tier, only he was qualified to watch the exchange of blows between 2 Shattering Void tier elites at a near distance. "Fight, fight!" Hunyo appeared beside him, clapping her little hands. Right, he forgot that there was still a little monster. After a few moves, the beast snake king looked somber, but was reassured internally. She was indeed very strong, and not the slightest bit inferior to him. However, she was not stronger than him. After all, there were still more ordinary people in this world. Maniacs like those in the Purple Moon Empire were, after all, not commonplace. "Your Honor, I admit that you are indeed very strong. However, you are still not qualified to stand against the 5 sections. I advise you to stop while you can. Otherwise, all your lifetime's cultivation will become wasted effort," the beast snake king advised. The battle prowess of both parties were about equal. In a battle to the death, either of them could die. Additionally, he was still waiting to enter into the immortal realm after the reckoning and become an immortal. With such a wonderful future ahead of him, how could he be willing to die? "Ha ha ha ha, ignorant fool. I didn't show my might, and you really think you're something awesome, don't you?" Yi Shuang asked, smiling. She bared her teeth, and 2 blood-colored wings instantly appeared behind her back. No, no, no. They should not really be considered wings. They had neither feathers nor scales, but rather were very thin wings made of flesh, similar to a bat's. You, who exactly are you?" The beast snake king was no longer calm. The moment she spread out her wings, her aura instantly spiked, wildly, immediately dominating over his. This caused him to recall the Lunar King and the others. Instantly, a powerful shadow arose inside his heart. He had been dealing with those 8 freaks these few days, so even if he wanted to forget them, he was not able to. "You think you're worthy to know?" Yi Shuang asked disdainfully. She struck out with a palm, and all of a sudden, uncountable stars fell from the skies. A hole was actually ripped in the skies. 15 stars of battle prowess, definitely 15 stars. Without a second word, the beast snake king turned around directly and fled. In the Shattering Void tier, a gap of a single star would mean the difference between heaven and earth. That would mean definite defeat of the weaker party. Moreover, his battle prowess was only 12 stars, which meant a gap of whole 3 stars of battle prowess. That would mean she could easily dominate him with a mere flip of her hand. "Flee, flee, flee!" He returned to the battleship and hurriedly stimulated the vessel into movement whilst turning on its defenses. With him, as well as the defenses of the absolute saber, they should probably be able to cut out a path of blood for their survival. Yi Shuang had no plan to pursue him, either. She withdrew her wings and gave a lazy stretch, showing off her attractive figure in full view. Hunyo pouted. With a frown, she said, "Vixen." What she hated the most were those women who had shapely figures showing off in front of her. Ling Han pointed at the battleship in front of them and asked, "Why aren't you pursuing?" "I only promised to help you watch over your home, but never said I would be fighting off robbers for you." Yi Shuang giggled. Changing the topic, she said, "If you want me to move, it's not impossible, but what benefits would you give me?" "We're friends, so wouldn't mentioning benefits be too dirty?" Ling Han asked in a righteous tone. "Pei, don't try this trick with me. If you tell me all your secrets, I can move and level whatever 5 sects and Purple Moon Empire to the ground. How about it?" Yi Shuang offered temptingly. Ling Han gave a ha and retorted, "In your dreams. The 5 sects have such strong foundations, so who knows how many more awesome characters they still have. As for the Purple Moon Empire, though Fatima has never acted before, his power should be frighteningly strong to be able to command the 8 kings. I'm also very powerful, all right?" Yi Shuang countered, displeased. "Your current battle prowess is, at most, only 15 stars, and you want to sweep aside all opposition in the world. Difficult." Ling Han shook his head. "After another few years, perhaps Hellion Tianyan will be able to return to the peak, and with 20 stars of shattering void tier, I'll ask you again if you will be afraid." Yi Shuang humphed and said, "If I had not been restricted by this realm, and if I couldn't only use 10,000th of my abilities, that would be enough to sweep through this whole realm." "Isn't that nonsense? There are so many in the immortal realm, and any of the immortals would be able to do so there is no need to trouble you." A vein popped on Yi Shuang's forehead, and she exclaimed, "Brat, do you believe I will thrash you first? Don't think that just because you have a tough physique, I don't have ways to refine high-grade, well-tempered steel into soft matter." Ling Han did not plan to provoke this demonic woman too much, either, and said, "Hee, the weather is not too bad today. Nice breeze and warm sun. Let's just have some tea." "Tea is not nice, let's eat meat." Hunyo immediately piped up. Yi Shuang could not help but laugh, and said, "For Hunyo's sake, I won't bother to drop to your level. However, you'd better note down in a little book how many times have I helped you so far. You will have to repay the favor in future." Ling Han sighed and said, "People always say you should never wish for your kindness to be repaid. Why is your understanding so poor? You don't like it? Come bite me." Yi Shuang puffed out her chest, and her full breasts instantly surged forth. "Do not show off your breasts in front of Niao." Hunyo was anxious. Why did all of them have to pick on her small size? What? The 3 of them were just planning to descend to the ground when they saw a carriage coming from afar. However, it was not traveling on the ground, but rather in the air. The being drawing the carriage was actually a demonic beast of the shattering void tier. It had the shape of a lion, and the aura it exuded was enough to make the world crack. Yi Shuang immediately frowned. This time a powerful enemy had come. Her eyes passed over that demonic beast in the shattering void tier, as if she could see through the obstruction and see directly into the carriage. The person sitting within was the real powerful enemy. Chapter 819 Lunar King Battles, Yi Shuang. Chapter 819 Lunar King Battles, Yi Shuang. Yet Ling Han raised his clasped hands smilingly and greeted, "Lord Lunar King has arrived. Apologies for not coming out to greet you." Jejijij. An incredibly seductive bout of laughter spread out from within the carriage, causing those who heard it to feel as if they had been stroked by uncountable small hands, slightly itchy and a bit silky. "Huge vixen!" Yi Shuang and Hunyo declared at the same time. The carriage door opened, and a voluptuous, incredibly seductive beauty walked out. In terms of looks, Yi Shuang could match her, but in terms of bearing, though Yi Shuang was graceful as well when compared with the former, she paled. This was an extraordinary inborn beauty. She was born to enchant the whole world, real calamity. It was naturally no other than the Lunar King. "Yo, little brother!" the Lunar King greeted gracefully, then with hands on her hips, put on an incredibly seductive pose. Anyone who saw her would blush. "Look, haven't I become younger and more beautiful?" Ling Han's initial understanding of women was on the level of an idiot. That was why he'd only realized that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden actually liked him only after a millennium had passed. But as he was in intimate contact with Hellion Sun Shui, there was naturally a little improvement to his understanding. "And the Lunar King is indeed younger and more beautiful as days pass," he complimented. This great Vivin had once gotten into a fight with Ma Duo Bao over the issue of her youth. Thus, he definitely had to go along with her on this matter. The current him was quite capable of withstanding a beating, but with an elite on the level of the Lunar King, even if she could not kill him in a single move, it probably wouldn't be all that difficult for her to give him an agonizing beating. The Lunar King was instantly all smiles. Then she turned to look at Yi Shuang and asked, "May I ask how should I address you, big sister?" "I would not dare to be any big sister." Yi Shuang's beautiful face instantly cooled. "From what I see, you are much older than me." "How could that be? One look at that skin, and I know that big sister is definitely at least a few millennia older than me." The Lunar King really dared to say whatever she wanted. A vein immediately popped on Yi Shuang's forehead, yet she still smiled and said, "I heard you guys have been buried for more than 20 millennia. TSK, that would be much older than me, so you are the real big sister." No, not big sister, but rather grandma." The Lunar King giggled delicately and said, "I only napped for a short while. With time source fluid to slow down the passage of time on my body, I have only slept a few years at most. I would not dare be treated as a grandmother, so I had best return the respectful address to big sister. Big sister. You are the big sister here. Your whole family are big sisters." The two women glared at each other as their temper flared up. Ling Han really didn't understand. It was only an address, so what was so important about it? Looking at the way these two women were acting, they seemed to be ready to immediately start a fight. Hiss! That destructive power would definitely exceed the time when Yi Shuang was fighting the Beast Snake King previously. It could practically be claimed to be on another level. Yet Hunyo was ecstatic and said quietly, Fight quickly. It's best that both of them are beaten to death." Ling Han advised, "Lord Lunar King, your long journey must have been difficult. Why not come down for a cup of tea? Get lost." Both women moved at the same time, and bang. Ling Han was struck flying over 100 miles away. Fuck, he was merely trying to stop the fight. So why did he have to suffer this absurd disaster? "Come, let me take a look at your abilities." "Jejij, that is precisely my intention." The two women once again rose up into the air and began a furious battle. It looked like these two women had not completely lost their wits and still knew to avoid damaging the imperial capital below them. However, from the first moment, they were completely showing off their ultimate moves and engaged in an extremely ferocious battle in midair. Blood devours world. 8 lunar techniques. In the exchange of blows between the two women, they were instantly shooting out powerful moves, making for an incredibly terrifying display. Ling Han was awed. This was the real battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier. In comparison, the Beast Snake King was practically a kid. Both their battle prowess should be about 15 stars, just about the same with the 15-eyed Corpse King and the giant Silver Spider. There is obviously only a gap of 3 stars of battle prowess, but they are so much stronger than the Beast Snake King. I really can't imagine how terrifying that old dragon with 20 stars of battle prowess would be. Ling Han mumbled. However, since there could appear one person with 20 stars of battle prowess, why couldn't there appear a second or a third? Who knew whether the 5 sects had sealed away this kind of elites or not? Hopefully not. After fighting for a while, the air suddenly became silent. The Lunar King and Yi Shuang Shuang both descended. There were a few rips and tears in their clothes, revealing their snow-white skin. One could even get a glimpse of the erotic beauty hidden inside. However, the two women also immediately drew out a cloak from their spatial spirit tools each, so Ling Han could no longer have an eyeful. If I could use my full abilities, a single finger would be enough to crush you. Yi Shuang Shuang's anger had still not abated. Yet the Lunar King smiled and said, "You are indeed from the immortal realm. However, with the restriction of the realm, you only have 15 stars of battle prowess, which means that you had only reached 15 stars before you broke through in the past, and that's not stronger than me." Ling Han was confused and interrupted. Should it not be that descended immortals have 20 stars of battle prowess? Yi Shuang Shuang shook her head and said, "The restrictions of the realm are not calculated so simply. In truth, the maximum limit this realm can accommodate is the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. But whatever battle prowess you can reach at the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier would depend on your own talent." Ling Han finally understood and said, "So it's that your cultivation level has been suppressed to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and not that your battle prowess is suppressed to 20 stars of Shattering Void tier." There was a big difference between the two. For example, both Helian Rong and Wenren were in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, but one only had 10 stars of battle prowess and the other 11. If the both them had a duel to death, Helian Rong would be very quickly killed by Wenren. He would not even be qualified to take Wenren down with him. That was precisely the reason why even descended immortals could not suppress Helian Tianyan those years ago. That old dragon had reached a battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier at the time, and that was indeed enough to sweep aside all opposition in this realm. "Oh, right, Lunar King, with the war so tense in the Middle State, why have you come here?" Ling Han hurriedly changed the topic, not wanting these two women to begin bickering or even get into a fight again. "Oh, the 5 sects? They have already lost once to us before, and nothing will change the second time." The Lunar King said very loftily, "We heard you've established your nation, so with a suggestion of His Majesty, I came to help you train your armies." "That would really be great." Ling Han was pleasantly surprised. He had only secretly learnt a few tricks of training soldiers from the Purple Moon Empire, but it was far from claiming to be skilled. "Jejij, then how are you planning to repay me, little brother?" The Lunar King smiled flirtatiously and gracefully. "You're not allowed to have designs on Ling Han." Hunyo immediately stepped out in front of Ling Han, stretching out her arms widely, looking like she was protecting her food. The Lunar King instantly laughed raucously. She shook and swayed in her laughter, displaying her shapely figure in full view, causing both Hunyo and Yi Shuang Shuang to inwardly call her Big Vixen at the same time. The Big Vixen would not be staying for long. She had brought with her 100-person army, and they were all elites amongst elites. Not only were they skilled in training soldiers, their personal abilities were also very powerful, and they were enough to help the Great Ling Empire conquer both the East and South regions. Thus, the Lunar King invited Ling Han to head to the Middle State. The war with the 5 sects was soon to begin, and even Ma Duo Bao might move in person. Chapter 8:20 Return of the Demon Emperor. Chapter 8:20 Return of the Demon Emperor. Ling Han gave it some consideration, and accepted the Lunar King's invitation to head to the Middle State. There would not be much use for him to stay here anyways, as there were absolutely no hostile elites here that needed him to step out. And in the case of the sea race, Helian Tianyan could practically cope with all of them. Then there were only the 5 sects of the middle state that had to be dealt with. This was the most important priority. Without eliminating the 5 sects, what use was there to talk of splitting open the skies? After Ling Han made some arrangements, he prepared to set out. Hellion Sun Shui was definitely going to stay behind to handle national affairs. Thus, Ling Han only brought Zhu Xianer, Hunyo, Rabbit, and Gold-Seeking Rat with him. With Yi Shuang overseeing things, he was not afraid that someone would ransack his lair. "Kakaka, where is Ling Han?" They had yet to depart when they heard a sinister, spooky laughter ring out. A mysterious person, hidden completely under a cloak, appeared above the imperial capital. Ling Han could not help but wear a strange expression, and said, "What's going on here? Shattering Void Tear is a bit too cheap, isn't it? Why do they appear so often here?" This mysterious person was definitely in the Shattering Void Tear. The aura exuded by them was incredibly astonishing, forcefully ripping through the air. Ling Han soared up into the air, looked at the mysterious person for a while, then suddenly exclaimed, "You are the Azura Demon Emperor! Kakaka, brat, your eyes are not that bad." The mysterious man flipped open his cloak, revealing a tall, sturdy man. He had regular features, with a beard as sharp as a steel needle. The Azura Demon Emperor did not have a physical body. Whichever person his demonic chi enshrouded, he would become that person. Thus, there was no way to kill him. That was why he had been split into 9 parts and suppressed separately. However, the current Azura Demon Emperor was really strong. Merely looking at him, Ling Han felt pain as if his eyes were about to crack. 15 stars of the Shattering Void Tear. Fuck, the ultimate elites in today's world were all cheap, weren't they? Appearing one after another. Years ago, the Lunar King and her 7 companions were enough to sweep aside all opposition in the world, which was proof that 15 stars of Shattering Void Tear was the topmost tier of this world. Yet now, there had already appeared a number of people with 15 stars of Shattering Void Tear. Aside from the 8 kings, there were still the 15-eyed Corpse King, the giant Silver Spider, and Yi Shuang at least. And now there was an Azura Demon Emperor. "You retrieved all your 9 parts?" Ling Han guessed. It was practically impossible for the Azura Demon Emperor to have battle prowess exceeding 15 stars when he was intact. If he had had it, how would he have been defeated and split into 9 parts? "Kaka, that's right." The Azura Demon Emperor stared fixedly at Ling Han, his eyes filled with extreme fury. Each of the 9 parts existed individually, but after merging, all their memories would be combined and belong to one person. To him, this human was extremely detestable. At the time, he tricked him into possessing a chaos source rock that was practically ready to be scrapped, almost condemning him to eternal damnation. Thankfully, the 9 parts could meld into each other. He had been found by his other parts swallowed, and only then did he manage to break out of the chaos source rock. Otherwise, his maximum ability would only be in the flower blossom tier. "Hand over the chaos source rock," he commanded harshly. For an existence like him, the chaos source rock was the best vessel, as well as the biggest opportunity. It was more precious than any amazing alchemical pill or any ultimate cultivation technique. Ling Han shrugged and said, "Sorry, but it's long gone. Why don't I just give you some random rock? Don't be disdainful. After all, what rock is not a rock?" "You still dare to act stubborn?" The Azura Demon Emperor humphed. He absolutely did not believe that Ling Han was capable of refining the Chaos Source rock in such a short period of time. This was an absolutely impossible thing to happen. It was impossible to accomplish even in a few millennia, what more when only a few years had passed. That was not a treasure that could be used by a mortal. "You're not handing it over." He laughed weirdly. "That's all right. I merely need to possess your body, and your everything would belong to me." Possession, for him, was a piece of cake. His original form was a stream of demonic chi. Ling Han became serious internally. His physique could withstand any blow from the shattering void tear, but what about his soul? This Azura demon emperor posed a huge threat to him. Obediently deliver all you have to me. The Azura demon emperor stretched out a hand, grabbing out in Ling Han's direction. Pum! Pum! Right at this moment, two beautiful fists shot out at the same time, simultaneously landing on the Azura demon emperor's face. A terrifying force exploded, instantly sending the Azura demon emperor flying. The Azura demon emperor regained his footing. His whole face had completely caved in, and the back of his head was protruding slightly, looking incredibly strange. If this had been another person, he would definitely have died. However, the Azura demon emperor merely stretched out a hand and smacked the back of his head. Pah! The caved-in face immediately bounced back out. Only his features had been misshapen due to the compression, looking very weird. This was so disgusting it would make one vomit. Yet, the Azura demon emperor completely did not take it to heart. Instead, he gave out a cold aura and said, I never thought that there would be two powerful beings here that are not inferior to me. If you know what's good for you, get lost quickly, the Lunar King said lazily. Kakaka, if you want to chase me away, you would have to have that kind of ability. The Azura demon emperor licked his lips. I have never possessed the body of a woman before, and I suddenly feel very interested in doing so. The Lunar King's beautiful face instantly froze over. She said, You actually dare to have designs on me? You're really looking for death. She immediately charged out, beginning a series of berserk attacks on the Azura demon emperor. Previously, the Azura demon emperor had been suddenly beaten by the two women. Aside from that, he had also been careless, as he had never imagined that the tiny Great Ling Empire would actually have two elite cultivators of the shattering void tier standing by here. Of course, more importantly, his original form was demonic chi, so he absolutely would not care whether his vessel would be wounded or damaged. He could just switch to another body, right? You have quite a good body. I am definitely claiming it. The Azura demon emperor cackled as he continued to parry the Lunar King's barrage of attacks. 8 lunar techniques. The Lunar King used her ultimate move, her whole head of black locks dancing wildly. A divine saber took form behind her, slashing towards the Azura demon emperor. Xiao, after a single slash, another divine saber formed and continued to slash again. Ah! The Azura demon emperor exclaimed in shock. You have actually formed power of regulation. It was as if he had had some unfathomable experience, his tone filled with terror. You evil thing from the netherworld. The thing you fear the most would be the restriction of the realm, and the power of regulation is given form by the powers of the realm. It is the perfect thing to suppress you. The Lunar King delivered unceasing blows. The Azura demon emperor grunted endlessly. His cultivation level far exceeded the shattering void tier, and so he had naturally formed power of regulation as well. But his power of regulation had been cultivated in the netherworld, and completely could not fit into this realm. His power was very strong, but without the support from the world, how could he stand against the power of regulation of this realm? Damn it! Damn it! The Azura demon emperor was repeatedly forced into retreat with a barrage of blows. Fighting with the Lunar King was equivalent to him being suppressed by the powers of the realm. This was too great a disadvantage to him. After a few more rounds, he finally gave up the battle, turned around and left. Brat, unless you are planning to hide beside these two women forever, I will definitely occupy your body and take over everything you own. He tossed out a line that fitted the situation. Ling Han sneered coldly. When he broke through to the shattering void tier, he would use his sword heart illumination and kill this great demon. Chapter 8:21 Arriving at Cold City. Chapter 8:21 Arriving at Cold City. After this little interlude, Ling Han and the Lunar King set out on their journey. Very soon, they arrived outside the regional barrier, yet discovered that the regional wall no longer existed. I found it troublesome, so I shattered it, the Lunar King stated calmly. Strong. After that reckoning 10,000 years ago. This should be something that the group from the immortal realm helped to construct, but she actually dismantled it, which was proof enough of how powerful this big vixen was. They traveled unimpeded, and could see that this was already the territory of the Purple Moon Empire. The city ahead had already raised the national flag of the Purple Moon Empire, which looked very grand. Another 10 days later, they had arrived at the capital city of the Purple Moon Empire. Ma Duo Bao came out personally to receive them, which was giving Ling Han enough face. Why do you look so highly on me, Brother Ma? Ling Han asked in confusion. With his abilities, even if the sect leaders of all the 5 great sects came here, he did not even need to give them a second glance. Ma Duo Bao laughed heartily. My Tan brother, I have never looked wrongly on a person. You are fated to stir up the winds of destiny. Your achievements will definitely not be lower than mine. Ling Han was feeling extremely pleased internally. He was also confident that he would be able to gain unprecedented accomplishments in the future. But before he reached this height, he was already treated as an equal by someone whose abilities were far superior to his. This naturally made him feel very comfortable. However, Brother Ma, can you not call me your Tan brother anymore? All right, my Tan brother. Ma Duo Bao readily accepted, yet he was the standard type to never change his ways. Ling Han was rendered momentarily speechless. After a while, he finally said, Brother Ma, I can offer you some suggestions on the usage of power of the nation. Oh, tell me about it. Ma Duo Bao did not take Ling Han lightly. Ling Han relayed all the information he had heard from Yi Shuang Shuang, causing Ma Duo Bao to immediately sink into deep thought. Sire, so the fact we failed at splitting open the skies the last time was your fault? The Lunar King cracked her knuckles. You damn fatty, you are indeed unreliable. Ma Duo Bao hurriedly raised his hands in surrender and said, Even if I had learnt the correct method the last time, we would still have failed. Why? The Lunar King turned a dangerous look on Ma Duo Bao, but did not move to attack. Ma Duo Bao sighed and said, Even last time I was almost filled to bursting point with power of the nation. Even if it was possible to increase power of the nation tenfold, I would not be able to bear it. The Lunar King stared blankly. After a while, she suddenly leaped up. She grabbed onto Ma Duo Bao's face and exclaimed, You turned yourself into a damn fatty. Are you cultivating some kind of weird cultivation technique to increase your tolerance level? My beloved subject is indeed clever. Ma Duo Bao had been squeezed into deformation, but he was still very amiable and laughed. At that time, we did not unify the seas, yet I had already reached my limit, so I did not command you all to set out on an expedition against the seas. Unfortunately, my ability was still not enough to split open the skies. Therefore, I recultivated my physique to be capable of bearing stronger power of the nation this time. All of a sudden, the Lunar King's hands drooped, and she stamped her feet as she said, Give me back my handsome, suave sire. Though looking at a fatty for a longer period of time makes it easier on the eyes. But how could it compare to how suave the original sire looked like? She immediately scrambled over to Ling Han's side, grabbed him, and said viciously, Little brother, you definitely must not follow that damn fatty. I do not want to see another damn fatty. Ling Han hurriedly raised his hand, smiled, and said, Of course, of course. He indeed did not want to become a damn fatty either. But what cultivation technique was Ma Duo Bao actually cultivating that it used the fattening of one's body to increase the toughness of his physique? After improvement, perhaps merely the power of the nation of the middle state would be enough to fill me to bursting point. Ma Duo Bao rubbed his chin. From Ling Han's experience, building the totem before congealing the will of the people would be enough to increase power of the nation by tenfold. After all, the middle state was the haven of martial arts. A single state was enough to match 4 regions combined. So if power of the nation was increased another tenfold, the effects would definitely be double or even triple when he united the whole mainland. Although his physique had been improved, but was it twice or thrice stronger than before? We'll just try and see. Ma Duo Bao immediately began constructing the totem. This symbolized the image of the whole nation, so he had to consider carefully. Now, the Purple Moon Empire had already occupied over 90% of the actual land of the Middle State. Only small parts the 5 great sects were occupying had yet to change their flag. However, the 5 sects' territories were not far from one another, so they could support each other. It was very, very difficult if they wanted to conquer any of them. Such a small place, yet there were gathered over 100 shattering, void-tier elites. There were also powerful ultimate tools like the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe, so they were definitely not easy opponents. It was necessary for Ma Duo Bao to act personally. The final major battle was not far. Taking advantage of this time before the final battle began, Ling Han decided to make a trip to Cold City. There were 2 cold spear associations there which were connected to a few of his disciples, so he needed to clarify things. He brought Zhu Xian, Hunyo, and the others and set out. A few days later, they arrived at Cold City. Before that, Ling Han only knew that the Cold Spear Association was in Cold City, but he did not have a very clear memory of where exactly Cold City was. It lasted only until the moment he arrived here, when he could not help but look distracted as if he had transmigrated through time and returned to the past. Cold City was Eternal Light City of 10,000 years ago, and also the place where he had lived. He had never thought that after 10,000 years, this city would still remain, and had not been destroyed. Ling Han could still recognize some broken parts of the city walls, and they were no different from 10,000 years ago. Ling Han, what's the matter? Hunyo asked, tugging at his hand. Nothing. Ling Han smiled and walked into the city, holding on to Hunyo's hand. He was heading straight for the Cold Spear Association. However, there were 2 Cold Spear Associations in Cold City. One was in the south of the city and was named the Southern Spear Association, whereas the other was in the north, and so was called the Northern Spear Association. The 2 Cold Spear Associations both claimed that they were the real Cold Spear Association and were frequently involved in tussles with each other, nursing an unending feud between them. Ling Han had come in from the Eastern Gate, so it was about the same distance whichever Cold Spear Association he went to. He took out a copper coin and smiled. If it's heads, we'll head to the Southern Spear Association, and if it's tails, we'll head to the Northern Spear Association. In the end, it was tails. He walked neither too fast nor too slow. However, the city was only so big, so he arrived at the Northern Spear Association not long later. I want to see someone who can speak up around here, Ling Han said to the guards standing at the entrance. Who are you? The guard retorted, his face wearing a disdainful smile. This was natural. If any random person could just come over and demand to see their boss, what did they think their boss was? Ling Han smiled and said, My name is Ling Han. Just go ahead and announce it just like that. Ling Han. The guard started. The members of the Cold Spear Association naturally understood. The purpose they existed was to gather anything related to Ling Han, obtaining them at all costs. Of course, this Ling Han was the alchemy emperor of 10,000 years ago, and not this young man in front of him. In the hearts of every member of the Cold Spear Association, the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago was a supreme existence. He was like a god that could not have sacrilege committed against him, and this man actually dared call himself Ling Han as well. This was too despicable. He gave Ling Han a look and said, All right, I will go in and announce you. If he did not call out elites to beat this guy so hard that his own mother wouldn't recognize him, there would be something wrong with him.